大坂へよう参られた。馴染みのない石字でござりまするな。
My master asks for you to draw a map of the world.
Japan. It's here. My country, England. It's on the other side of the world.
お前は何を求めて火の元に来たのじゃ。
To vanquish our common enemies.
You heard it up top. We are staying literary as we tackle another novel adaptation when we're doing the hit new miniseries Shōgun on Hulu. Here on Normies Like Us with your hosts, Barbarian Colin.
This is Lady Mike Ria. Praise be.
I like your cross.
I'm learning
Portuguese.
Portuguese.
This is Anjin Cobb-sama.
Anjin Cobb-sama. We don't use sama for Anjin Cobb, though.
Not for you.
No, I'm a Hatamoto.
You're a Hatamoto now. That's right. We got to
Yeah,
show some respect on your name.
That guy's a Hatamoto. A number of people would just say, do you hear? That guy's a fucking Hatamoto now.
That guy's
right.
a Hatamoto.
Here's your house and your wife, and yeah.
That's how it goes.
Yep. This is yours now. So yeah, we're talking Shogun. You're going to hear a lot of great lingo like that. You'll learn what a Hatamoto is maybe on this episode. But yeah, as we're saying, the new samurai spectacular kind of Game of Thrones style show that's been airing on Hulu. We got the first 4 episodes at the time of this, right?
Look, Booktober continues here on this podcast.
Yes.
Mike,
Wow.
As we
October.
continue our strange literary
Book off, yeah.
Butch Arch.
Yeah.
End of
Yeah.
Bookuary into Barch.
Yes,
Look, we
Bookuary's
talked
good.
Stranger Tides, a book adaptation. We talked
right.
Mhm.
Starship Troopers, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And here we are.
Dune.
We're talking
We did
Shogun.
Dune as well.
talked Dune.
Don't forget
We're
Dune.
talking
My
Shogun. now.
favorite.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Shogun. It's based on a novel. It's a mini series, and it was already adapted once before in the 80s. As Colin, you sent the trailer for that
Yeah.
version today in our chat, and yeah, it's a 10-episode miniseries. We're 4 episodes in, so the 5th one will be out, I believe, tonight. So you may be listening to this. The 5th episode may be out already, so no spoilers. But we're talking the first 4 episodes.
Very
Yeah.
exciting. Do you guys have any history with this? I guess let's just say for the book for now, or like the original miniseries.
I
do
not
not.
encountered any of this as far
Neither
as
do
the
I.
book or the miniseries.
Yeah.
This is my
This
first
is,
go
of
at this.
course,
Let me
written-
let me real
Yeah, go
quick throw it to you guys then to say let's do history real quick of
Mhm.
Japan, because I'll throw it to you guys and I'll say real quick, I've never been to Japan. I love
Oh,
Japan.
fair.
I love Japanese culture. I've never been to Japan. How about you guys?
Wow. Well,
Jacob,
of course,
please.
I have been to Japan once back in 2017, almost 7 years ago now. It'll be 7 years this fall. Long time. I wish I could go back, but I had a great time there. And I'm wearing my authentic Japanese hoppy that I
Yep.
bought in Japan,
Wow.
as you can see. Now,
Very
this,
cool.
on the back is a logo for a Japanese baseball team. That's very cool. It's like a
The Tokyo
like
Giants,
a-
it seems like.
is it Tokyo Giants?
Could be.
Oh wow.
The logo is a baseball, like a animated baseball riding a baseball bat, like a witch's broom. So
Oh, okay.
pretty cool.
okay.
Yeah, pretty.
I was gonna
pretty
say you
cool.
look like a sushi chef or a fishmonger, maybe, if you had the
That's right.
headband on.
Well, it is
Yeah,
that kind of
see
that
that.
garb, yeah, that you would see in that kind of setting. So it's very neat. I'm
And I am-
jealous of it.
And I am growing my hair out so I can put it in a some kind of
Oh.
Top
hairstyle
knot,
like they
a
have in the show.
chomage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
might
gonna
just shave the top of my head.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say you're gonna do the bald look. Cool.
Yeah,
Nice, man.
I'm really into it. But yeah, I like Japan a lot. But of course, I'm, compared to Mike Sama here, I am not. I am
Yeah,
a
yeah.
novice in Japanese culture.
Yeah, I guess I'm a sleeper weeaboo build because I don't really go running around talking about how much I love Goku every day or anything. But I had like an
R.I.P..
interest in Japan. Yeah, RP, Toriyama-san. But that's kind of a casual interest in like Japanese history since I was a kid. I like ninjas. There's a lot of ninja stuff when we were kids, and I just kind of followed that. So I know a lot. I'm not a historian, but I know a lot about this time period, and I can kind of talk about
sure.
who the characters are based on in real life and that sort of thing.
Have you studied the way of the blade, Mike?
Only in my backyard. I've not studied the way of the blade. I have been to a ninja museum in Iga in Japan when I was younger, when I was 17, and I've been to
Whoa.
Japan 3 times now, and I've actually been to the Norinaga character. He's based on Ieyasu, and I've been to Ieyasu's actual grave site in Japan, and
Yeah.
I've been to Osaka Castle. So seeing it filmed in the show
Okay.
is kind of interesting as part of a context. So I know a little bit about the Warring States era, Nobunaga,
Yeah.
Hidetomi, all that stuff. But yeah,
The
I
great
like Japan.
unifier, right?
Correct, correct.
I know a little bit about that era as well. Not compared to you maybe, but I wouldn't say you're an expert, but of the three of
No.
us, you're probably know the most about Japan. But I do know a little bit about the real people that these characters are based on, and so yeah, it's very interesting. And actually, so I visited my mom last month or a couple weeks ago, right when this show started coming out, and I was like, you got to check this show out, Shogun. It's really good. We watched the first episode, and my mom and stepdad, they had just been traveling, and they had just been to Osaka, and they went to Osaka Castle as well. They're like, oh, Osaka Castle, we've been there.
Yeah.
So it was very cool for them to see it on film too.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, like having been there, like you see places that you're like, oh, okay, I know that's the entrance to the tourism area, but to see it like in period appropriate kind of presentation it's really cool to see that.
I've never been to Osaka, but I would like to go. I've only been to Tokyo. Didn't leave the Tokyo city limits, but I would love to go again and see more of Japan. I think it's a beautiful country, and I would love to go back.
Osaka's only 30 minutes
there.
Yeah, like a English pilot in Anjin-san. But
Right.
yeah, Kyoto's really close to Osaka too, and they have a lot of classic temples and palaces from this era. And then I want to touch on our history with our boy Hiroyuki Sanada, producer on this, starring in it as our main lord. I mentioned him in Message from Space, that Star Wars knockoff show early in his career. We've seen him in John Wick, so
Shocking.
yeah, it's really cool to see him kind of leading this thing anyway. But
that's right.
Yeah.
And he's had a long career, and he's finally getting these roles where he can really showcase like his talents, where he's not just Scorpion in Mortal Kombat. No offense to Mortal Kombat 2021 or whatever, but
that's right. Wow.
Actually, fun fact about that. So he of course played Scorpion in that movie. Tadanobu Asano, who plays Yabushiga in the show, the bearded guy who's kind of like following
the guy with the feathers and
Toranaga,
stuff.
but he has his own motives. Yeah. He played Raiden in that same movie.
That's right.
I did
So
not
there you
realize
go.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
I saw the Marvel connection with that guy, but I did not realize. I'm sure half the cast was in fucking Mortal Kombat. So
I guess
cool.
before we'll get into it proper, but also like the guy who plays Ishido, he was the father in the Godzilla Monarch show that I watched, and then Anna Sawai, who plays Mariko, was the main girl in the Godzilla series too. So,
she's good. I like hearing that. Then. That's interesting.
She's excellent in this. I think the Godzilla is just an inferior show, the Monarch. But it's
a
cool
different
to see
kind of role where she's maybe a more subtle role, and she's having to speak Japanese and do different things. But I'm excited to talk about this.
I think
I started watching this when the first episode came out, and I was like, you guys gotta check this out. We gotta do an episode on this.
A heavy Cobb recommendation here. Yeah.
I was just like, this show has become sort of like appointment viewing for me, where every time it's on, every week, I'm just like, yes, new episode. Really, in a way that I haven't felt maybe since Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
or at least House of the Dragon last summer. So
I would agree.
Yeah,
and this it was always on my radar, like given my background in this kind of stuff. So I was always wanting to watch it. I just was waiting to kind of see where it was at. But when you were saying this is really, really good, I got excited and then, burned
I was like,
through
you
these
guys are
first
going to
4.
love this. Mike especially. It's going to satisfy your inner weeaboo. But I did want to mention, so that the original novel Shogun was written by a guy named James Clavell. Not a Japanese guy, obviously. A British guy.
Shocking.
But it's a very well-known novel, and then he also made a bunch of other novels that aren't necessarily sequels to this, but it's called the Asian Saga, I guess, and it's just different stories set in different parts of Asia and different time periods. So he has
I
one
assume
called
it's all kind of
Taipan.
historical fiction, because again, it's
Yes,
not
exactly.
that this isn't a direct adaptation of history, but
No, it's
everything
loosely
is very
based on real
inspired.
people.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So he has one set in Hong Kong and one in different different time periods and stuff, just covering
right.
historical events. So
Interesting.
very well known, I guess, novel, but I've never read it. And of course, it was adapted in the 1980s. It was a huge hit, that first miniseries, and like we were saying earlier, so the amount of people that were watching that in America, 33% of all households in the U.S. at least watched some part of that miniseries. So it got like saturation, like isn't possible today because there's so many different channels and so many options to watch. But back in the day, people were just watching this thing like crazy. And the Hiroyuki Sanada role was played by Toshiro Mifune, of course, who is the actor that worked a lot with Akira Kurosawa, very famous Japanese actor. So
Seven Samurai, all that. Yojimbo, he's the Yojimbo,
that's right.
as it were. Yeah.
Maybe the greatest samurai actor of all time.
Oh, easily. And then you'd think
he didn't just do samurai either. He did like gangster roles and stuff. Film noir type stuff. So he was a great leading man. Sure.
Absolutely. So, and then I think now we have Hiroyuki Sanada kind of followed in his footsteps, worked with Sonny Chiba and stuff, GI Samurai. Like there's been it's kind of this lineage that's coming from the Kurosawa era and now to here. So it's fitting that it's back in 2024. And so I can't think of a better person to lead this show. And I think we should probably jump in there and get on this boat and steer into the into the swell.
I'm ready to do it.
I said into the swell.
Hayako.
Again,
Yeah, let's do it.
We're back here on Normies Like Us, where we are talking Shōgun, the new Hulu miniseries. So Jacob said it up top. It's going to be a 10-episode event. We're not covering all that yet. We're up to episode 4 here. So we're kind of going to go through, give our thoughts and feelings on that. We'll kind of sum up where we are. Obviously, spoilers. But first, let's kind of do a little history lesson. So you said it's the Sengoku period, Mike.
Yeah. So there was Sengoku period is the Warring States. It's everybody was trying to unify Japan. Basically, the simplified version is there was 3 bigs: Oda Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, which Tokugawa is the guy that is Hiroyuki Sanada. So basically, Oda kind of got it all put together. He had to commit seppuku, so Hideyoshi took over. And Hideyoshi died in 1598, and he's actually the character who dies in this show
died
to set up
the show.
Sure.
So what's creating the Council of Five?
Council of Regents and all that stuff. Yeah.
So that the Council of Regents was a thing. The character names are different. So Hiroyuki Sanada's Norinaga is technically Tokugawa inspired, but then everything else after that. So that's where we're at, is kind of the first unifier guy who was running it is dead, and now the regents are set up.
So do you guys know any of that? Like, was that coming up in your history classes? Like, I know the Edo period, I feel like. Was that like after the Sengoku period?
That's just prior. Like the Edo was stated, it became the capital like around that time. It used to be Kyoto, and it was Edo.
Right. Yeah. And Edo became Tokyo. Right.
And then this period lasted until the Meiji Restoration, till the 1800s.
Right,
this period spans from around 1600 to 1860.
So if you think about, Colin, The Last Samurai, right? That movie with Tom Cruise. That's
incredible.
That's set in like the 18 somethings. So that's like 250 years after this. That's the end of this period, right before the Meiji Restoration happened. So it's the end of the samurai period, right? That's
and they go through another wave of isolationism during that time too, and that's why Tom Cruise is like, we're going to make them trade with us, because
the closed door policy that Japan kind of becomes famous with in their history. Yeah,
but this of course is set in the 1600s, the early 1600s. Another movie set in the same time period, kind of dealing with the same thing, is a movie I've talked about on this podcast before, Martin Scorsese's Silence, right?
Oh, what?
Yes.
No, it's good that you bring that up, actually, because, that's about the missionaries, right?
It's about the Portuguese, the Jesuit missionaries, and the persecution of Christians in that time period. Adam Driver, Andrew Garfield, Liam Neeson,
because it's not there's another thing that had to do with like factions of Christianity that we were covering too.
That too. But I was just going to mention Tadanobu Asano, who played Yabashige, played the interpreter in Silence, so he was also in
Oh,
Silence.
sure.
Well, there you
Sure.
go. Oh yeah, and
as I was
that's
sorry.
go ahead.
I was talking about earlier when you said it was Booktober or Book March or whatever.
Yeah,
March.
March.
Our pirates on Stranger Tides dealing with similar issues of religion, Catholics
Yes.
versus Protestants and all that. So
No,
pretty
and then
interesting.
Paul Muad'Dib, Lisan Al-Gaib said silence, with the voice as a reference to that movie.
Yeah.
That's right. He said, "I love
That was a direct
Silence" by Martin
reference to that
Scorsese.
movie.
Uh-huh.
Right, that's right.
Well, it's about
My
religious
best
He
friend
figures
was
Martin.
in
too.
that.
Yeah.
And Timothy Chalamet was in that Martin Scorsese directed Cologne.
He
ad.
was Jacob. It's all
So
tied
there you
together.
go.
It's
Listen, while we're
all-
throwing movies out here, Mike, here's what I've been thinking about while watching this. You know
Mhm.
what movie this miniseries makes me think of? Highlander. Because of course there's the Spaniard played by Sean Connery who lived in Japan and became a famous sword maker because he's lived throughout history, blah blah. And he talks about the Edo period, which is why I think I knew that off the top of my head or whatever.
Right.
But I get
Absolutely.
thinking of him saying like Spaniard and talking about Portuguese. Like I've just been laughing my ass off watching this show. I love it.
It's great. I'm really excited to talk about all the different factions and things. But Mike, maybe talk a little bit about so of course in this period Japan was very separated into all these different like fiefdoms, right? Of these different daimyos who ran their own fiefdoms, and there was no
single ruler of Japan.
Right. There's no emperor at that time, I think.
Yeah.
So that's why the great unifier Oda Nobunaga, I believe, was called that because he unified all of Japan. But do you want to explain what a shogun is or a shogunate?
Yeah, so basically even the show goes into it, but the point is once someone has basically become the ruler of all Japan, you get all the kind of kingdoms under your single rule, you become the shogun, right? Which is they say the highest title a mortal can achieve. It's the ruler of all Japan, the highest station at which literally a human can get to, so because obviously the formality here, we're dealing a lot with samurai culture in this show, and the levels of formality and the station you have and the class kind of system is very, very important. So the shogun is like near godlike in reverence and influence, right?
And that's what I think is so interesting about this show is the sort of the different cultures and how. So obviously, one of the main characters is this guy John Blackthorne, an English sailor who sort of gets shipwrecked in Japan. And of course, he was based on a real person named William Adams, who...
what a boring name. Sorry, William.
Yeah, John Blackthorne, much better name.
Yeah.
But he did become like an advisor to Tokugawa Ieyasu.
And historically was like considered the first Westerner to be welcomed to Japan, Jacob, I would imagine.
Yeah, if not the first, one of the first. But because the Portuguese were already there, like in the show. So he's the first Englishman to show up there, I guess. But he's the first Tom Cruise, right? That shows up and is like, the Last Samurai.
Well, he's like also a certain Tom that you pointed out.
That's right.
And this guy,
shout out
Cosmo. What's his name? Yeah, Cosmo Hardy?
Jarvis.
Tom Hardy.
Yes,
Cosmo
Tom Hardy. Great value, Tom Hardy.
Yes.
Which I think at this point is almost. I don't mean that as an insult because I actually really like this guy's performance.
Same.
I am addicted to watching the choices he makes because it is like a person who, if you were like, you have to act in something and they'd never heard of acting before, but they'd seen one Tom Hardy performance and they were like, well, I'll just do what he was doing.
Yeah. He's doing a very weird voice, which I love, but every line reading is just I'm obsessed with it.
Yes.
And what's so great about the show, I think, is that, like I said, the culture clash of this English guy, and then basically all the Japanese characters look at this guy as like this dirty little gremlin who refuses to bathe more than once a week and is like,
barbarian.
Oh, he's fucking barbarian. Like, get away from me.
And it's fish out of water. We've kind of seen this, and we keep saying Last Samurai, which we also had Hiroki Sanada in that movie. But I like the way it's tackled here. It's very East meets West, and it is the whole unstructured Western, like you're saying, London's dirty, and then you have Osaka is this kind of pristine city. And they say in The Last Samurai, like they were had all of this civilization when you were like running around with bows and arrows and sticks and stones in Europe. You know, like this kind of level
Because, of
of
course,
sophistication.
Right.
Yeah, the Eurocentric viewpoint of these Englishmen is like, oh, of course we're the center of the world. We have all the technology and everything. Nobody outside of us could have anything as sophisticated as we have. And then he sees Osaka for the first time. He's like, holy shit.
You have plays here? Yes, we have plays.
Yeah.
Right. But of course, they
Here's
see the Japanese as savages, but then the Japanese see the English as savages. So it's very interesting. But
Right.
I want to set up, here's my through line for why I find this show to be fascinating. Because I agree with you, Jacob. It is about the culture clashes, but it's the way that it is presented that you put yourself in his position where you go like, if I was in a high court where saying anything or being improper or, doing the wrong thing or giving the wrong vibe led to people being like, you should go outside and kill yourself. Like, I would be very nervous at all times.
They set that up very well. Yeah.
Like, you're not taking my guns from me. What's going on? What are they saying? What is all this? I want to put this out there. Guys, this is an isekai. This is an isekai anime.
Yeah.
This is a guy who is taken to a different land who has to blend in with like the other people around him. This is the OG travelogue.
That's true. It's the old isekai, another world. That's true.
Yes.
And I do love, like you said, they set up very early on when that guy speaks out of turn. Like, not only are you going to die, you're going to kill your firstborn, your whole lineage.
Right.
It's like it's a big deal. This is serious.
All because his lord was insulted and he spoke out once.
Try to back him up.
Okay, go kill yourself now. But
like,
I think
if my dad came home from work, Jacob, and was like, I really embarrassed myself today, so you have to kill yourself, and then I'm going to kill yourself, and your mom's going to live in shame, I would be very bummed out about that.
And I've always, and historically, like, it is a really, like, it was very strict, right? The honor thing was a big deal. But as a fan of ninjas, I always felt like that's pretty strict, man. Like, I would rather stay alive. Like, that was the ninja philosophy. I'll run away. Like, I will not kill myself. I will leave.
I'll be a fucking wild gamer.
Yeah. I'm going to go Portuguese in Macau.
I got no honor.
But it's very serious. Stakes are high.
The Japanese culture that they really highlight in the show, it is all about procedure and politeness, but you're concealing your true self. And that's what it's like. They say, like, every man has three hearts, right?
Yes.
The heart in his mouth that he speaks to the public, and then the heart that he keeps deep inside, and all that.
The eightfold wall story. She tells later, where she says, like, and it might seem like we're not present, but there's a sadness inside us. I'm like, why are you all accepting this? This is horrifying.
But their whole culture is based on honor and politeness, and you can not do anything that would give offense, but you're you're always just concealing your true self behind this eightfold wall. It's just different than, the Eurocentric way of living. I think one isn't better than the other, but they both have their pros and cons, I guess.
Yeah. And even to this day, it's sort of like the three heart thing you're saying. They have like a hone and tatamae concept, where it's like, hone is what you think, really, and tatamae is what you're showing the world, right? So it's like exactly how she's explaining, with the eightfold. It's like,
because I think
it looks it's
modern Japan. It's not as strict as this, but they do retain some of that, where it's like they're really concealing their true feelings behind, like, politeness a lot of times in public, where people will be very polite, but really it's almost facetious because what they really believe is different.
You can't tell. So it's like everyone says, Japan is like the nicest country, and I love Japan, and people are very nice there. But it's like, because the social contract is we will be polite, there is like a layer beneath it that you don't know what's happening, and that's just kind of how it is to this day.
So. Measure those court scenes and how everybody has to act, how they have to move, where they're looking, what they're specifically saying,
where they're
versus the Spaniard and Englishman screaming, "How's your mom? Is she a dead cocksucking whore?"
Yeah, right.
Like that.
But then again, if you
allowed to say that shit to each other, like, fuck
seriously.
you.
Yeah. But
Right.
it's also like a class difference, because if you went to like the royal court in England, you would be expected to act a certain way as well, right? And you couldn't just like do whatever you wanted in like the Queen of England's castle, right? So similar kind of thing. But what I think a big theme of this show for me is communication, right?
Yeah.
Where we have, how do we communicate across language barriers? And then when you have an interpreter, can you even trust an interpreter who may have their own motives? Like, of course, so the English guy is Protestant. He's a Protestant Englishman. They're at war with the Catholic Portuguese and the Spaniards, right?
Mhm.
And when he first gets there, of course, no one can speak English in Japan because
Right.
they never met an Englishman before. So, and he can't speak Japanese. So in order to talk to these Japanese people, they have to go through an interpreter, a Portuguese interpreter who has his own motives, and wants
Right.
to kill this Englishman because they're enemies. So
Yeah.
Two seem to hate each other, but don't you both worship Jesus Christ? And when he has to
Right.
go like, yes, but it's a very different Jesus
different.
Christ.
Yeah.
And that, they're like, mind is blown because they only know Catholicism through the Portuguese.
Yes.
So to know that there's a whole other kind of Christianity, their minds are kind of blown by that.
Yeah. So
and then there's
all-
of course, the differences between the Christian Japanese people who are converted and the
Mhm.
Buddhist Japanese people. So there's just a
Mhm.
lot of different things going on, a lot of different factions or different motives.
Yeah. Because you have the interest in trade that the Portuguese have that they want to control. Then they're also kind of politically maneuvering where they have one of the 5 lords is, Catholic, or a couple of them are Catholic now. So there's a lot of political
I think 2 of
maneuvering
the 5.
happening. Yeah. And then, yeah, so all the scenes in English are actually in Portuguese. Like when we're watching the show,
That's
they're speaking Portuguese in all the English language scenes.
So
That's
yeah,
interesting.
so all the Japanese characters, when they're speaking Japanese, they're actually speaking Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're speaking, of course, there's a lot of Portuguese in the show, but they're actually speaking English, because the reason for that, I think, is very simple, because it's easier to get actors that can speak English and Japanese than it is to get actors that can speak Portuguese and Japanese, right?
And I think you can only get
So-
Westerners to listen to one foreign language.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I think makes sense. Like they do the Hunt for Red October thing with the Portuguese, but the Japanese is still Japanese, and I like that. And actually, I was reading the 1980 miniseries went even further, where they had all the Japanese characters speaking in Japanese, and there was no subtitles.
That's so
because
awesome.
they said, John Blackthorne doesn't understand him, so whatever he doesn't understand, the audience doesn't understand. So,
That's a bold
that's
choice.
cool.
interesting. Yeah.
They should have that option in the closed captioning, hardcore mode.
Well, speaking of options, for you guys are watching it subbed. I did the first 2 episodes that way, and then I just had to switch over to the dub, just because it was easier for me to start figuring out what characters are what characters.
No,
that way. I've just got to pay attention too much. Yeah.
No, I won't be too hard on anybody for doing that, but being, intermediate, I guess, at Japanese language, I do like watching it in Japanese, but they are using like old school dialect. Like there's some verb conjugations that are like crazy. Like you don't hear it in regular speech. Like it's such a higher level, like upper class and like back in the day. So there's some stuff that's similar, but there's some stuff that's like way different, even like grammatically. So
yeah. I think I won't begrudge you for watching it that way. But I think if you're watching the dubbed version, you might be missing some of the subtle acting of the Japanese characters, like Hiroyuki Sanada, where he's doing such a good job with the acting that I just love to listen to the Japanese language and the choices he makes. And I think you might lose something with an English dub. But I haven't seen the English dub, so I don't know what it's like or anything. But
right.
I do that for anime sometimes, because I feel like with anime, it's a lot easier to make a dub sound natural because it's animated instead of live action. But I really don't like when live action is dubbed over, because I don't like when what they're saying doesn't match like their mouth moving. So
mouth thinks.
Yeah, that's just my preference. But
I mean, I'll admit to
I
having
do think you should commit seppuku.
Yeah, I agree.
And I will, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I have a cheat sheet. Like I'm not gonna like remembering all these characters after 4 episodes. There's a lot of the names are kind of long, and if you're not used to Japanese names, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around them.
I won't
they're
be saying
flying
any of
at
those
you.
names.
Yeah, I can cover that.
I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on the characters' names and things and their relationships, and I've also, I should say, I've watched every episode of this twice.
Wow.
Because I like it that much, where I just watch it and then I watch it again like a couple days later.
Good for you.
Because I'm just obsessed with the show. Man. Yeah, and a lot of people, they're kind of bummed out because like, this show's so good. I wish it had a season 2, but of course this is a limited mini series. It's 10 episodes and that's it. That's the whole story.
And it's based on a book.
People are saying, people are like, oh man, they should. And it's so popular right now. It's been a big hit for Hulu.
Well,
and they're like, how are they going to, capitalize on this? But what they said is they could do other the other novels of this guy James Clavell that are set in different time
No,
periods
no.
and locations.
Here's what you do, and then we'll kind of get into what this show is doing. But you do everything right before this. You do the war for unification with Nobunaga and Ieyasu, and you do that whole period where
The
everybody's
problem
literally
is-
vying for control.
Yeah, the problem is this show is so good because it's based on a story that was already good. It's like the
Right.
Game of Thrones when they ran out of story, they started having to make it up themselves, and it wasn't as good, right?
This is
Benioff
that-
and Weiss. Yeah.
Right, but based on history, this is basically the final gambit for power. But there's a lot of other
Yeah.
power shifting you could explore if you wanted to do this style of Game of Thrones in Japan. You just set it 15 years before this. and
Right,
It's like
I'm
a
just
prequel
worried that-
series, but
It wouldn't be as good because it would be like
Right,
the
like
TV writers,
Benioff
instead
and
of
Weiss.
adapting something, they would be
Yeah, let me just go
making
with
it
what
up.
I'm dreaming up. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
yeah. So who knows? But what we have so far is excellent. And like I said, we have a fish out of water, John Blackthorne.
John Blackthorne.
Essentially, he's being
That's
used as a
right.
pawn because we learned that Norinaga is kind of on the outs. Everybody kind of wants to take over. He's the head honcho. He's in Osaka. He has all the cool shit and they want it. And so Ichido
Yeah.
is his main rival, and they're kind of conspiring to vote him out of the Council of Five,
So
which means he will
we should-
die.
right. Basically, when you get voted out, they're going to kill him and his whole family,
His
like
whole
entire
clan.
clan.
Yeah. Everybody who works for you. Your whole
Oh,
company's
so I
dead.
assume you'll be committing seppuku right now. That one guy says to him, he's like, not
Right.
Yeah.
yet.
Not yet. Hold on. Yeah.
But we should say also, so prior
Yeah.
to the show starting, the old lord
Mhm.
died. His
Yes.
heir is a young child who's not of age yet. So
Yep.
until the heir comes of age, it's very similar to Game of Thrones too.
Hey.
So
Pinky
Yeah.
promised me as I'm getting out of here,
Right.
y'all won't take power from my little boy, but the minute he becomes a man, you'll all back off and make him king.
right.
That's
Yeah.
a wild promise for you to ask yesterday. It's like, okay,
So-
you got it, my man.
Mhm.
Yeah, the old lord dies. They appoint this council of 5 different lords that have to sort of democratically vote on or divvy up power that way. But of
Mhm.
course, there's political machinations going on, and like you said, 4 of the 5 are basically trying to get Toranaga out and kill him.
Yep.
So he's in a predicament, right? Then this guy John Blackthorne shows up, of course. So this English and Danish boat crashes.
A Dutchman.
Mhm.
Dutchman, yes. And in this village, which is a village.
That guy blows his brains out off screen. He's like,
Yeah, the
"We're not
captain.
gonna
yeah.
make it." They're all like, okay. He's like, see you later. Bang!
Right.
Which, to be fair, that is a theme that's brought back later. He's like, when you get
Oh,
to be
yeah.
as old as me, you'd rather choose how you go out, and then we see that demonstrated.
Yes. That's
as well.
Suicide
true.
is
Later that
a
episode.
huge theme of this miniseries.
On your
I'm not
terms.
kidding when I say that.
Yeah.
Yes,
It is,
death
and
with
because
honor.
of course the Catholics, suicide is very frowned upon in
Mhm.
Christianity in
You
general.
can't
I
go to
believe.
heaven
Yeah, where it's like it's a sin and you can't repent because you already killed yourself or whatever.
because that's a
So-
shortcut. If heaven's so great, what am I doing down here,
Hey,
right?
let me get there.
Right.
Yeah, come on.
But in Japan, it's totally different. Where they have ritual suicide, where if you do something
Suicide's the
dishonorable, you're expected to commit suicide. So it's a very
Gotta get out
different
of
thing.
Nobunaga
Here's-
did
here's-
seppuku when he eventually got overthrown at some point. So
Right.
yeah.
Here's one other nitpick before we keep going. Now, Blackthorn is on this boat. They have not eaten for days, weeks even. We just ran out of our last bit of water. God, I hope we make landfall to the Japans. I want to point that out because I
Mhm.
love every time somebody says the Japans. I wish it was
Japans.
still called that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Later, we see Discount Tom Hardy. He is ripped when
Yeah.
he's naked. This guy has been starving to his death. He is a thick boy who is ripped, Jacob. Ripped.
Well, what are you gonna do?
He could be emaciated. Why not make him a skinny guy?
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Start
again,
out
if you
skinny.
watch the movie Silence, because
Super
Adam
skinny.
Driver and Andrew Garfield lost a bunch of weight for those
Yes.
roles to play these emaciated Jesuits
Mhm.
who were persecuted and all that.
And I'm Liam
Um,
Neeson. I'm Portuguese. Can't you tell from my thick Portuguese accent? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very good movie though, of course. Scorsese,
I have not
the
seen it.
goat. I recommend it. I mean, it's Scorsese has a very interesting relationship with religion. Of course, he's made other religious movies.
He's a Jesuit priest.
Yes.
I do have an interest kind of in this time period of the show is like exploring, because I've never really, I don't have knowledge of really the history of Christianity in Japan. I know it didn't really
Right.
stick because it's still 90% people either don't have religion, but there's a lot of Shinto and Buddhist things that people participate in, but it's not like religion's not like it's a big thing, but like Christianity never
Right.
stuck, I guess.
But at this time period, because of the Portuguese that were doing business with Japan, they're like, hey, we're going to bring all our priests over here. We're going to start converting your people and everything. We're going to set up churches in your villages and whatnot. So there's a certain sect of Japanese people who did convert to Christianity, but they were almost looked down upon by the Buddhists at that time and persecuted because of that, which this show gets into less than the movie Silence. But
if my fucking king decided one day he was Catholic and that I had to be Catholic too, I would be so fucking mad about that. I'm like, you just learned about this.
And that's weirdly,
England, they're Protestant. They're like, we hate the Catholics. So
right. Which, what's the difference, man? I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
One has more chores. I don't
one
know.
has
man.
a pope. One,
yes.
Basically, the pope. One thinks that the pope is like the word of God, and then one thinks that the pope is like a false prophet.
Just a dude.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we're going to war with this. But yeah, like that's a lot of how it did get spread, though, because they're like, oh, some foreigners are here, and the king will be like, oh, I'm gonna talk to them. And they're like, hey, yo, king, you should do our religion. He's like, sounds good.
Oh,
and then now the whole country is doing it.
Yeah.
And
You
it's
were
like, well,
that's I might be talking out of turn here, but I truly believe I heard this on a podcast once that the shaved head style started because an old lord was bald and he decreed that was the style.
huh. I could buy that. Like, hey, I don't know for sure, though. That's fun,
too
though.
much about that. Well, I was wondering why some of them have in the show. Some of them have the shaved head, and there's different hairstyles. I don't know if it has to do with sort of rank.
That's something I should learn.
Yeah.
Interesting. That'll be a research topic.
Yeah. But of course, so when Blackthorn shows up, the Portuguese are already there and they have their priests there and stuff, and they're also doing business, but they also might be not being totally straightforward with the Japanese about certain things, like they have secret bases in Macau and all this stuff. And because of basically the Catholics are like, okay, we're going to divide up the world in, we own this part of the world. And so when he tells the Japanese that, they're like, what? They think they own us? They're very insulted about it.
Yeah, and they're gonna replace our leaders and shit. They're like, hold on, because Mariko is like the niece of Norinaga, and so she is converted to Catholicism.
She's Catholic,
So
and we should talk about her.
Wears her cross. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Real quick, Hiroyuki Sanada, when he says to those Portuguese, all right, I'll let you build one church. And they're like, yes!
In Edo, but they're like...
Yes, yeah.
That's all they want to do. They want to spread their faith, and they want to do business and make money.
Because these missionaries, they would be going out for the crown to make money, find treasures, and spread religion, like, actively, right?
But of course, as we find out, Blackthorn's ship had its own hidden motives, where basically he says, oh, we're just merchants and all this. Their secret motive is to go around sacking these Catholic bases in the name of Protestantism.
They are pirates.
And and then also trying to get to Japan and open up trade negotiations with Japan and saying, hey, there's other countries in Europe besides Portugal. I don't know if you know that, but
the Dutch and England working together. God, history is so fucking funny.
It's really interesting. And the thing is, like, people don't understand how fascinating history can be because, school made it boring or whatever, but so much of history can be made into like a really interesting TV show like this because it is so fascinating, right?
Yeah, and
like even Game of Thrones was based on real historical events, like the
I was
War of the
thinking
Roses.
about like, but it's just when it comes down to the petty actions of man, sometimes history, because when you look at those Portuguese or Franciscan priests that are with that Portuguese pirate or the sort of pilot or the guy who runs the ship that they're on,
black ship.
You just imagine in history, like, well, if we were going to do diplomatic relations, it's like now what you would do. You'd be like, well, there's so many guidelines, there's protocols that we have to follow. You've got to do everything right. But back then it was like, well, we'll send 3 people, but the person they might hire might be like a drunk maniac that might ruin the whole thing. And that's just how the dice roll.
Hey, like, man.
Okay.
Well, it comes down to your ruler too. Like if your ruler is corrupt or
if he's having a bad day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh man, but I do. You see that kind of east-west, like we said, the juxtaposition of these elements at work, where it's like the Western focus, like they divided the world up. So to see these guys like basically doing shady shit behind Torinaga's back and stuff because they don't give a fuck, right? It's
and
fascinating.
I want to talk about Mariko. Let's talk about her in a
Mhm.
second, but let me say one more strength to the series because it's what we're discussing. When I think about the last Hulu series we covered, Echo versus this,
Hmm.
it's like a Hulu original. Yes, it's not even close. But Jacob, when you keep saying like the Game of Thrones of it all, obviously there's this epic scale, there's the treachery, the backstabbing and stuff. But I'll just say the pace and strength of the writing, because we've got these 10. It doesn't feel like we've got 10 because everything is such a slow simmering burn, and the way they get that information out, like all the stuff that Mike just said about like what the secret motivations of those Portuguese priests, it's not necessarily directly said to the audience the first time those characters come up. And I'll be honest with you, by episode 4, I was truly like, why do they want John Blackthorne? Like I kept thinking like, what is the purpose of the Japanese having this Englishman? And when Hiroyuki Sanada says like, all right, I've kind of hinted at it, I've danced around it, I'm going to very plainly say in episode 4, you're a British guy who knows how to use guns. I'm keeping you here to teach everybody how to use guns.
Right.
The story really, it really banks on you as an audience member just liking the show. That you're just like sitting around until episode 4 where you're like, oh, that's the main motivation and issue that my hero's facing. Okay, I'm still on board. That's great. But it's just a slow drip of information. It's incredible.
Yeah. And
Great
you can
writing.
see how Hiroyuki Sanada and John Blackthorne are sort of gaining this begrudging respect and friendship over time. But also the other reason is he's a pawn because Ishido, his main rival, is using these Christian lords on the Council of Regents. They're temporarily allied, but he's also trying to drive them apart because Ishido is not Christian, but 2 of the 5 are Christian, and he's allied with them against Toranaga. But so Toranaga is like trying to drive them apart, and that's why you have, when they're leaving town, you had the Christian guys' troops are killing Ishido's troops and stuff. So he's trying to make tensions between them because they need a majority to vote him out of the council, right? So he's doing all these very devious political
only got 4.
Right, and then
Yeah.
And using all of that too, like because they want to get Blackthorn and stuff, so he's using the rules, like the maneuvering that's happening, like with the 3 hearts. It's like you see it play out at the rate. Yeah. Like watching it again, I think Jacob would be interesting to see the drip feed.
I think it's hard to gain all the subtleties on first watch. That's why I like watch every episode twice. And the Christian lords on the council want this Englishman dead. Ishido, he might have his own motives too. So it's all just very interesting.
But some of them truly just think like this savage should not be here, right? Like that is just what they're just like. Just kill this white guy. Like, what is this white guy doing here?
Right. And of course, they even hire a assassin to take him out, who's the lady assassin that attacks in episode 2.
A brilliant plot where he's like, oh, the master's going to let you stay in his private quarters. It's a great honor. And you're like, what? And then you realize it was all a plan. He's 3 steps ahead.
They think
Toranaga.
Because all his household thinks that this assassin's trying to kill Toranaga, but then he's like, no, they're actually trying to kill Anjin.
Because I was sleeping in the room you were supposed to be in, right?
But Toranaga has all these schemes. He's like so smart, and he doesn't tell anyone really what he's thinking. And then so he has a subordinate, Yabushiga, which is like my favorite character because he's kind of like the scheming for himself. But
sick feathers.
But Yabushiga's literally like, "Are you ever gonna let me in on your plans?" And he's like, "One day,
maybe."
Well, he says like to like let your heart be known as like death. Like the person who sits the highest is the loneliest. Right.
That's why he's trying to cheat his son, because his son is a character, and his son is kind of like this fail.
I love him.
He's trying to live up to his dad.
Yeah.
Everybody says I'm just like an anemic little weirdo. Well, guess what?
Which crazy when we get there. Yeah. But that's what it's like. Everything that's said is what is not said. Like Colin was alluding to, it's like where your eye line leads, like the posture, like it's all in the subtext, and that's what's really fun to explore with
It's
this.
really-
It's just kind of
If
breathing.
you
It's
really,
really good.
knew this culture and watched this show,
Mhm.
I can't imagine what you're getting out of it. Because Hiroyuki Sanada, we should say, this is the first time he has ever produced a Hollywood production. So
Mhm.
he's never had creative input before. And he was like, no, we're getting all of this correct. And
Yeah.
again, production budget wise, I mean, guys, you were talking about how like some of these castles that they're like shooting in and stuff. Like
Yeah.
the sets are incredible.
Mhm.
Every time they're outside, it's incredible. The water stuff in episode 3, we'll get to it, but like the boat photography in this show is
Mhm.
incredible.
Yeah.
Well, all the the production quality is like top notch. Like the costuming, the cinematography, like the fight choreography is like incredible. Like it's all so good.
I don't know if it's a
Yeah.
hoppo or if it's a kimono, but whatever John Blackthorne is wearing when he gets to the village episode 4, I was like, that looks comfy as hell. I wish I had that whole fucking outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't. That's a yukata, I think. It's like just
Wow.
the undergarment of a kimono. But yeah.
And to
It's
see
not-
him
let me
where
chill in
he's
that.
like he naturally sort of is rejecting all this Japanese stuff for a while, but you can kind of see where he's like, hey, these Japanese people, they're not so bad. Like they kind of got to figure out, like they've got nice, scenic weather and all this stuff. They live in these nice houses. They sit on the floor all the time and just eat their food and stuff. Like pretty comfy.
Will you guys tell me what is the cheese stuff? I didn't want to Google it.
Oh,
'cause I was
okay. I do know
scared.
this. Okay. So do you know what natto is, Jacob? Natto is the
No.
food that he tries to eat, and they're like, I don't think you're
I
going to
thought
like
it was
this.
like
You don't want
fish eggs or
this.
something like
No,
caviar
so-
type of thing.
I have tried natto one time, and I hated it. I need to give it another try. But what natto is it's really popular in Japan. Or, it's supposedly very good for your health, right? And you eat it with rice, but it's fermented soybeans. And they're really sticky and like kind of gelatinous almost. Like they're really sticky. The Japanese term is neba, like really bendy kind of thing. And they smell horrible because they're fermented.
Right.
So
It's like
really
cheese, but it stinks. He kept saying. And I just
it
thought,
smells like
cheese
a
that
bad cheese,
stinks.
yeah.
Oh.
So there's an odor to it, the flavor and a texture. It's a whole experience that's kind of not Westerners wouldn't be used to it, but it is a
Well, I did-
common thing.
Yeah.
Ugh.
But I don't
I
like
love
it.
that scene though, where she's eating it. And he's like, "Let me try some of that." She's like, "This is maybe not for you."
Knowing what it
It is.
was, I was like, it's not for you, John.
Yeah.
But guys, that is, and I don't know what the 80s miniseries does. You would have to assume it would fall with 80s trope stuff, but that is something a bad show does episode 1 to be like, how different is our cultures? He doesn't like the weird food that they have.
Right.
The fact that again the writing is this beautiful scene of 3 people in this kind of forming triangle trying to relate and communicate, like Jacob said, that it always comes down to communicate, and that he is choosing to, I will partake in your culture in a bit, and they just sort of laugh at the genuine moment of that. There's not an ending beat of like, what did you call this again? It's
No.
fish penis. Womp womp. Like no. Like no,
Right.
there's none of that. There is jokes. It is a joke, obviously, that he thinks tastes bad, but it's this caring, loving scene still.
He's
Yeah.
beginning to engage with the
Yes.
culture, right? Like he's opting in.
And-
like it's not played for
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, everything he's done up to this point from the first episode has really just been to kind of stay alive because he's a prisoner. He can't leave. He's, first he's with his men in this dungeon, right? One of his men gets boiled alive.
which
so-
horrifying.
Yeah. So
Yep.
everything he's done to sort of like ingratiate himself to Toranaga and all that is really to stay alive and also to potentially open up trade negotiations for England. So he's really shrewd in that he's using, but he's also gaining an appreciation for Japanese culture at the same time. But he's using that and becoming closer to Toranaga. So
Yeah.
and of course,
Well, I'm saying we learn, but to kind of get back to why he's useful for Toranaga as well, it's like he catches wind of a base in Macau that has a bunch of Japanese soldiers that have been converted to Christianity that are going to be, they're completely unrelated. It's like they're fighting for the Portuguese. So there's this whole sleeper cell of Japanese people, and they think there was an uprising a couple years ago. It's like, oh shit, was that them? So now it's like, there are definitely foreigners meddling in our affairs, and like Norinaga catches wind of that,
Why?
and he's like,
Right.
okay, Blackthorn, you're with me. We got
Then
to.
of course he's also
figure this
got
out.
the rudder, the secret book that tells what Blackthorn's ship was really doing, and so the Portuguese give that to the Japanese. They're like, look, they are pirates. They're fucking trying to
But because
stack our bases and shit.
because he's savvy politically, and he says this seems like it's going to take a long time to translate.
Yes.
A very long
That's
time.
right. Yes,
yeah.
yes. That's
So
a
let's
great
talk
moment.
about Lady Mariko, right?
Yeah.
Mariko.
Lady
Honestly,
Maria, as the father calls her.
Right. So I think, first of all, honestly, I think she's really doing a really good job here. Yeah, I haven't seen that Godzilla show, but I think she's really doing good in this show. And she was based on a real character too, Hosokawa Gracia, right? Who was a real Japanese lady who did convert to Catholicism. I don't think that she ever met William Adams, the Blackthorn character, in real life, so that's made up. But she was part of the Akechi clan, which was the clan that planned and executed Oda Nobunaga. So,
and the character Samanosuke Akechi from the famous video game Onimusha is a real person who was a minor Akechi clan member, and you kill Nobunaga in that game. So the Sengoku period has been a thing for a while. But anyway, interesting.
But yeah, she is the daughter-in-law of what's his name, Hiramatsu, who's the like the most trusted general of Toranaga, right?
Yeah.
And I really like that actor too. He's got a very rough demeanor.
He's our Toshihiro Mifune, like kind of rough samurai man.
Yeah. And so she's married to his son, but she also, in the past, like her family was killed. Or do you know about this, Mike?
I don't know the
backstory?
full, because again, I don't know where this is historical, but I don't know her backstory. But it seems they're alluding to she was maybe of a higher station before an uprising, and then similarly to Norinaga just being a hostage basically until he was a teenager. It's like she's just kind of stuck in this position now.
And she says even her cousin who ends up with John Blackthorn was a highborn, so you'd assume her whole family was.
Well, she said she had a very famous, because she never said her family name, but it's Toda, right? And it's a very famous name within Japan. It's a very high clan, I guess. But she, of course, did convert to Catholicism years before the show, and she knows Portuguese. So she's also used as an interpreter so that Toranaga and Blackthorn can communicate. So she's kind of the go-between. And then, of course, they start to have some feelings, right, for each other.
Now,
so
what's the Jacob, on your second viewing? It is the confirmation she is the one who sleeps with him, correct? It is not a different one of the courtesans. Why does she deny that, or what game? It's
for appearances, right? Because his wife can't know that she's getting it on with him, so she's like, "We got you this courtesan." And so I hear you had
even
a good
if they
time
both know, they have to say,
different prostitute. You're sleeping with me. Oh, okay.
But again, the Japanese in their culture, they had a different view of sexuality than the Christians did, where you can courtesans are not frowned upon like prostitutes in England would be, right?
Yeah. What do they say about Hiroyuki Sanada? He has 5 wives, they even say, right? You've taken 5 or 6 wives, and then he's like, do you want me to apologize? He says that at one point. They're like, no, that's fine. And he's
but even when he first gets there, they're like, oh, you really should pillow with someone, which is what they call
the doctor.
The one scene I watched of the 80s miniseries was the pillow scene. It's a shot. It's basically a shot for shot or word for word. I was shocked.
Nice.
But then they're like, we can get you we can get you a woman.
There would be no pillowing.
He's like, what? He's like, well, do you want a man instead? And he's like, what? He's very offended by that.
You would have the Tom Hardy guy does, Jacob. There will be no pillowing.
I pillow anyone.
You suggest buggery? Because, of course, homosexuality was very frowned upon by the Christians, but viewed differently in Japan. So,
but the doctor being like, do you need some company? And he's like, a doctor, all pimp. It's
what
like, okay.
yeah.
When he has to make the distraction, he starts calling those women unclean, and she's
That's
like,
my
he
favorite
doesn't
part.
like that the loose women are around. They're like, I don't care.
Yep.
He's like, it's improper for you to look into a
Gross.
woman's carriage
I
and
don't like
stuff.
this.
Mhm.
Someone online cut that scene into. So do you know the scene of the guy who's getting arrested for having a succulent Chinese meal?
Yes.
Do you know that video?
It's a famous Australian video. Yes. You know your judo well.
Chinese meal.
Look
It's
it
a
up.
very funny video where this
Chinese
super
meal.
drunk guy is just. It's. We used to quote it all the time, Mike and I, when we worked with some of our friends. But someone cut that scene in with that
audio?
video because he's just going
indecent.
crazy. It's
It's
so
a similar
funny.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
Wow,
Democracy
that's
Manifest, is what he says at the end.
that's right.
There is a to bring us back to the courtesaning really quick. There is a culture even in Japan today where like prostitution is not necessarily considered cheating. It's like if you don't cheat in your heart, like the pleasures of the flesh
Right.
are not the same as betraying like your
Yeah,
love,
it's like
right?
everyone
Yeah.
needs to have a release sometimes. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't mean anything if there's not true feelings of love there, which is very different than how the Christians view sexuality because they're very repressed and that kind of thing. So
Right. So with them denying it, even if I think his wife knowing Fuji maybe knows, but her and Mariko kind of have the save face. Even if anybody found out, like, oh shoot, Mariko's slept, like with the
yeah, again, it's
Anjin,
all
like
about
everything's
attention,
fucked.
right?
Yeah, politically
But
you're
here's
fucked.
the thing. I don't need, because obviously they keep pushing the podcast at the end of every one of these episodes.
Oh,
Listen
yeah.
to the podcast to understand what happened in this episode. I don't think you need that.
listen to
The
this
drama
podcast.
unfolds, and yes, please do. And me not knowing enough about that culture, but just having conversations with you guys,
Mhm.
that cements it. But I still leave that scene going like, oh, okay, something interesting is starting up here. Okay, like it's
I
all,
like
it's
his
again, the
face
writing's
during
so
that
good.
too, where he's like,
Yes.
oh,
Yeah, and then he's a
okay.
little slow to pick up on it, but
Mhm.
yeah. And then of course
Well, I feel
he's
better
given
because
this.
of the company I had, which was you.
It's like, no,
Yeah.
the
Okay.
Again, he's
courtesan.
this dumb
Shut
English
up.
guy who's trying to understand their very like precise culture where you can't misstep or you'll get executed.
Anybody who is speaking a language that the other people around them don't know, like him saying that in front of his other wife, or the Portuguese guy who's like, "Where's Lord Dumbass?" And he keeps saying
he's
that
my
to,
favorite,
the
yeah.
Japanese.
Yeah.
Like that is so great.
All these other
Inglés.
shithead
I like
samas
you,
and
Inglés.
stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
But of
man.
course, he's given this wife who doesn't want to be his wife, and is like, "I guess I'll do it for 6 months because I owe, it's my duty to my lord." But because he's made Hatamoto, which is a honorable appointment, basically, or like
It's like a vassal regent kind of
yeah.
positioning.
Give him
Yeah.
a job.
because he impressed
Yeah.
Toranaga,
Your middle
he saved
management.
him. Yeah. And so Toranaga's like, "I'm making you Hatamoto. Here's your
Making
house.
you
here's
regional
your wife."
manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Guns.
Here's your wife, and then here's your interpreter, who you also have a relationship with. Pretty good situation for John Blackthorne.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, all things considered, he keeps thinking
can't
it's just
complain.
a bigger cage. He wants to go to my boat.
Well,
Where's my
But
boat?
he almost starved on a shipwreck and then got
Right.
pissed on by a guy and
Every
yeah.
boiled alive. So
Every word sounds good to him. The deal's getting sweeter. The two issues are, I'm staying for 6 months. No, I need to go. And where is my crew? You keep saying
Yes.
my crew is here. Where is my crew?
Yeah.
that's the thing. He's
And they-
looking out for his guys, right? And in the first episode, so before Toranaga becomes involved with these guys, they wash up in this village. The lord of the village is the nephew of Yabushiga, who is an underling of Toranaga, who is sort of working for Ishido too. So he's kind of has split loyalties where he's like, well, technically I'm supposed to be working for Toranaga, but it seems like Toranaga is about to die in his whole clan. So I'm trying to align myself with Ishido so I don't also have to die. So he's got his
True
own
honor.
motives.
Yeah.
But he shows up in the first episode and boils one of the people alive, right? One of the men, because he's obsessed with the moment of death when someone goes from living to dead. Like he's just obsessed with that. And then so he listens to this guy screaming all night, and the next morning he's like, "Oh, write a haiku for me about what that was like."
Yeah.
Which I thought was a very funny scene too.
Yeah.
Wild. Even the guy.
I'm obsessed with this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have the reason they're in the village at the end of this, I guess, is, Norinaga as his gambit is, you need 5 people to vote. I'm resigning from the council. Your rules gotcha. So he's going to, I guess, Edo right now to try to kind of sort some stuff out with other allies. And then they're staying at the village to do the gun training for a little bit.
So they go back to the
He
village.
pulls a
and first
Trump.
wash
He
up on.
basically says, if I'm not president, you can't impeach me. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, essentially, in the first
Not
episode,
us.
he's
Mhm.
imprisoned at Osaka, basically, where he's invited to come to Osaka, but essentially he's imprisoned there. And so he has to get out. So he uses this. He has this whole scheme to get out, where he switches with a lady so he can hide in the little carriage, right?
Mhm. Succulent Chinese
I'm
meal.
your honorable god, and now let me put this little dress on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My lord is known
amazing
for his
stuff.
trickery. Yeah.
That's cool. They
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
He's so tricky. Yeah.
Wow.
Here's another, just one more compliment. I'm just gonna keep letting them down.
Yeah.
The way this show makes anything seem impossible, where literally they go from like, all right, like Jacob was just saying, we're in this one village, let's go to this other village. That's a day's hike. You know what that means? We probably won't survive.
You can be attacked by
Oh my
bandits or
okay, like,
lord soldiers. that
What
want
would happen if you needed to like use a rope to go down the side? Like, surely ropes were still good back then. No. Everything is shitty. All the quality of anything is fucking difficult to use and impossible to survive. Oh,
Yes.
When they say, like, we get earthquakes a lot, we have different natural disasters, and that's why we build our houses out of like paper and stuff, so they're as easy to take down as they are to put up if we need to move because of the natural disasters.
Or
and
if
stuff.
they
Like,
get destroyed, you can rebuild it quickly. Like that whole thing. She says, "What we have death in the sea, on the land, and in the air we breathe." You know,
Normies,
fucking
so it's kind of a curse
Gojira.
where
yeah,
Japan
she knows all about that. Her ancestors.
You're like,
Gojira,
he's Gojira?
Stay away from Odo Island. Yeah.
But that's kind of the curse of Japan, is that they have this beautiful countryside, but then they have all these kind of problems with it too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
And I guess another contextual historical context is it's really mountainous, so there's not a ton of farmland. So the farmland you have, it's very coveted, and that's why you kind of end up with the warring states. Period. It's always, even in medieval Europe, it's about who has the farmland. And resources basically. But
I should have fucking conquered Korea by now, Mike, and then I could have left you Japan.
Yeah, I could have given you Japan.
Well,
sheesh.
That would have been nice.
Yep.
And actually, the older, like Hiramatsu and stuff, they were fighting in Korea prior to this. And they were doing maybe not.
There was historically there was 2 attempts to invade Korea from feudal Japan side, and again, nobody should be invading anybody. And even as much as we like samurai stuff, it's like there's a lot of bloodshed happening. That's any period in history. Knights,
but medieval
armor,
Europe is the same way.
Bad shit's going on.
The way this show,
we don't condone invading.
No, we do not. But when any characters show up in full samurai armor in this show, it comes off how I felt watching Star Wars as an 8-year-old, where I'm like, well, that character's invincible.
Yeah. And
of course, Star Wars is influenced by Kurosawa samurai movies.
Darth Vader is a samurai helmet, like with a mempo.
Toshiro Mifune was almost Obi-Wan.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have been amazing.
Dang, that would have been great.
And all that. Yojimbo.
Yeah. And then you see they keep showing the armor of the old lord just sitting.
Yeah,
and like
it's like the
figure
specter
still
of
looms
Lord.
over
Right.
everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to have his wife give him the swords is like, holy shit. Now they're like, oh, now he's got swords as he's integrating into the culture.
God, that's so badass.
I'm very glad he hasn't trained with swords yet. I feel like
why
would they teach him that? Well, like they don't trust. He doesn't need to know how to use a blade. He's still kind of a prisoner-esque.
I was a little worried after that 3rd episode, Mike, because peeking with the boat stuff, where it seemed like we really
my lord would like to race you to the shore.
Don't fucking
don't let him win.
He'll fucking be mad about it. It just seemed like that was such a culmination, those 3 episodes of like, wow, we really got something done here. I felt very opened up and informed about what the plot was, that when we got to this village in episode 4 and things slowed down so much, Mike, where he's like having time to get these swords and have like quiet contemplation. And I just had a feeling that like these sets are ones we're going to be around for a while. I am a little worried we're going to lose some momentum here going forward.
Yeah, I'm wondering because at some point we'll have a big battle in Osaka, I would assume. But we're still setting the pieces on the board. We're training for like X amount of months. So yeah, we could be here for an episode or two at least.
Now that said,
definitely
that third one was my favorite, and then the fourth one I was like, I don't know if I'll like this. And then all that canon stuff was fucking incredible. So
well, that's the thing. It kind of ends on like, oh shit, now things are about to pop off because of Tornaga's son kind of instigating a war. But yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes. I haven't looked ahead. Like not familiar with the plot of this book or anything. So I'm trying to avoid anything because I don't want to be spoiled because I'm just so into it. But it definitely seems like things are about to pop off because, of course, Ishido's men kind of show up. So he's training them to use his English cannons and stuff because they're like, oh, teach us your Western tactics. And he's like, well, I'm not a soldier. I'm a sailor.
One war you were in.
Well, I'm a sailor. I was sailing around, but I will teach you the cannons.
Don't really shoot each other at boats. Well, here's the thing, and here's why.
Like you can't siege Osaka, but put my boat out there, and I'll do something.
I'll hammer on that badass. John Blackthorne, the way that they've written him, when the Spaniard says to him, "You're a pilot, Anjan." Yes. Prove it. What would be the latitude longitude of? Well, it's this. That he has such a good head for figures and mathematics that when he's going around talking about the fucking canon, like it's got to be this, it's got to be this, and Yabashira, what's that character's name? Yabashiga's saying like, fucking, I've seen Portuguese cannons before. They don't fucking do shit. Watch this. And when he nails it, and they're like, oh, those must be some good fucking cannons. No, John Blackthorne just has such a head for early mathematics. Like, what a weird advantage that is.
You know the range, Yes. But I think the English cannons, they do have some kind of technology to make them shoot straighter or more accurately.
They're rifled or something to a degree.
I guarantee they're
longer.
Yeah.
But that stuff's all great.
Also, how big a gun is. Remember when a pistol you shot one time was larger than your arm?
They had to spend a minute reloading and putting powder in and everything if you missed.
You can't shoot up a fucking Walmart with that, you fucking assholes.
Nope, seriously,
That's why like the revolver was such a big invention because like you can shoot 6 times before having to reload. That's like insane.
You'll kill 6 people? That's a massacre.
And then there's a Yojimbo, the bad guy, famously comes back from America or whatever and has a revolver. He's just running around with a gun, and Toshiro Mitsune's got a sword. Like, what are you doing, you asshole?
Right.
That's right.
That's why even in the show they're like, well, we have guns. We've had guns for a while, actually. We know how to use them. He's like, well, not like us Englishmen do.
Right.
But then, of course, so Ishido's men show up while he's training Toranaga's men, and Toranaga's son is there with Yabashiga, who he kind of left those two in charge while he went to Edo. So Ishido's guys comes, and they're like, okay, you have to come back to Osaka because Ishido's like pissed right now. And then Yabashiga is like trying not to upset them, like trying to. But basically, once they show up, they know like either we have to kill these guys or we have to go back to Osaka because there's no other way to resolve this now that they've seen us.
So he's trying to play like, I want to show you these tactics we're doing, and you can tell that to Ishida. Yeah, spend the night. I'll show you this cool shit tomorrow, and we'll go back to Osaka.
Cannon. You seen a cannon?
Yeah. Not like this. Yeah, trust me, these are gonna blow your mind, dog. We got the
Chinese invented gunpowder.
That's what it's been generally purported.
Noble invented dynamite. Where was he from? He was like German or something.
Probably.
TNT.
Okay.
Gunpowder was China fireworks kind of early on.
Yeah. Well, Marco Polo went to China, right, and then brought back
brought all the
noodles to Italy and gunpowder. Yeah,
that's right.
Never forget, Italian food is American Chinese fusion. Tomato came from the New World. Noodles came from China. Anyway,
well, whoever else did guns, we perfected it. We fucking figured it
out.
Colt
won the West, baby. Anyway,
so they call it the Peacemaker.
But of course, so they spend the night, right? But then Toranaga's son has his own plan, right? And he's got these other cannons set up across the way. And then he fucking springs the trap on him. And this scene is insane. When they
insane.
When they talk about the chains and it happens and they're obliterated, and that guy says, "This is not the samurai way." And he just keeps saying that. Like you feel that before he even has to clarify it. When you're like, what honor is there in this?
Right.
And the fact that they're all getting their swords and walking up to the corpses to make sure they're dead, you're like, I am not on your side for that. That's fucking bullshit.
But it's kind of, they're desperate because the other option is like to go back to Osaka as prisoners where they'll probably die. Yeah. Like Yabashika knows, like if he goes back to Osaka, like, yeah, he's expected to like commit seppuku and he doesn't want to do that. But I was also
or he has
about,
to vote and just work for
yeah.
I just can't get over him saying that.
I was thinking about how hard it would be to be like a foot soldier of one of these lords, because like basically if you lose a battle, like everyone's dying, like they just kill everybody.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like that's why when people say, "Oh, if you could live in any time, I'd want to be in medieval England," it's like, no, you wouldn't. Like I wouldn't want to live in samurai time either. As cool as this show makes it look, I would just be a normal peasant, and it would be very high stakes.
Yeah, first of all, the likelihood, you would probably be a serf if you were in medieval England. You wouldn't be like a knight or something.
I would be a slave.
Yeah.
I would be a slave.
Just let me
You'd probably die of the Black Plague before you turn 30. So
yeah. So no, it would be tough to be under these lords. It's like, yep, all right.
Yeah,
everybody's
and
dead
even
now.
the scene where so Yabashika sets up this whole plot where he has bandits attack the guys that are transporting Blackthorn, and then the bandits kill all those guys, and then his men come in and kill all the bandits and rescue Blackthorn. It's like, damn, man, like so many people had to die for this one thing to happen.
And then to get at the ladies out of Osaka, they're like, yeah, there's just too many bandits here. And like, even though everybody knows what's up, they're like, yeah, there aren't there? You know, like it's all this maneuvering, but it's a lot of people dying.
Put the cheap sake out when that woman says that.
We should have had better. Well, we should have had worse shit. Yeah.
The fucking worst shit out.
Yep. Turns out Norinaga's not staying here. Yeah, no, we should get the bad stuff.
He just dips immediately. Yeah.
But that's kind of where we're at now. Like all the maneuvering and subterfuge is over because his son just decided to dishonorably destroy all these dudes with cannons. And it's like, well,
and he's also like,
the first shot has been fired.
Because he's like, yeah, everyone respects my dad so much. I've got to like make a statement for myself as a man. Like I'm going to do something to really get people's attention, right? Because classic son of a great man type thing where he's like, I need to prove myself under his shadow and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But this felt like this moment felt to me like when they push him out of the window. It was like, oh shit, like shit's about to pop off. Yeah. Like this, it's a tipping point, right? And that's what we're at.
Yeah, and I mean, there's people have compared the show a lot to Game of Thrones, which I think is a very good comparison because of all it is similar writing where all these different motives, these different factions vying for power or just trying to stay alive, and
what's being said versus what is being implied and the political maneuvering that's happening. It's all similar elements of all of that. Chaos is a ladder.
Chaos is a ladder. That's
absolutely
exactly what it is.
And that's what I love about it. And then we didn't even talk too much about the Portuguese, but they're doing their own thing. And then the Spaniard that works for the Portuguese, Rodriguez, who I really like this character.
Yeah, he's great.
He kind of has a begrudging friendship with Anjin, right?
He's incredible.
They're on different sides of a war and they're supposed to hate each other, but they can't help but like each other.
You guys remember this guy as the mayor of Dark Knight? Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight. He's the mayor who drinks the poison thing the Joker gives him and his like throat melts or whatever.
Oh, whoa.
I mainly remember him from Lost because he was in Lost. He played Jacob, whatever in Lost.
Was he on the island? Oh.
No, he was Jacob. He was like the...
Oh, yeah. One of the DARPA village
You guys
people,
will do...
right?
Well, he was like
I'll
a personification of the island. I don't know. That show was...
Don't tell me
that show's dog shit. I want to talk about a better island. Islands, the Japan.
Nestor Carbonell.
He was
Nestor
an island unto himself.
Great actor.
Yeah,
he's great in this. Doing a great voice too.
Inglés. I like you, Inglés. I won't kill
you.
you.
I guess also, because we could touch on their side too. They just want to make mad money, right? That's basically what they're doing. So Norinaga has to like begrudgingly, right? He has to use them to sneak out of Osaka too, where he's like, "I'll give you the church."
Because Ishido's men are lining sort of the bay.
Like,
these
you
pirates
have
and
to
boats
stay here,
gonna...
Blackthorn. Fuck that.
He's
like, no, I don't.
Because the Portuguese want Blackthorn dead because he's a Protestant savage from England.
Yeah, and he's literally was coming there to kill them. So it makes sense, but even that whole thing where they keep asking for more. Like we see Torinaga as like
Yes.
the king of all shit, right? And then these Europeans are just like, not good enough, not good enough. Just like
Right.
disrespecting the fuck out of him.
Well,
He
even
just has
the,
to take it. It's really
Yeah, the captain of the black ship is kind of at odds with the church too, because the church is like,
Yeah,
well, we have to
he
do
hates
this, and they say like, I don't give a fuck about your religion, man. I'm just trying to make money.
I'm not losing the
Uh,
wind.
Yeah,
we
gotta get this
just got
black ship
permission
out
to
of here.
leave. Well, they just gave us permission I didn't fucking ask for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez. But we
I
know
love
what
it.
missing
I
the
love it.
wind because the dude's like, we were in Macau for too long and that's why they were fucking starving on
Yes.
Blackthorn ship. So like it's a big
Yes.
deal to leave on time. I get why the merchant guy wants to get out of there.
Yes.
But the disrespect is just like, damn, bro.
Yeah,
That's survival, you know?
It is.
right.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah, great show. Super well written. Just, I mean, everything about it is just really good. Like I said, the production design, the cinematography. Like, I want to shout out the cinematography because every show nowadays is so fucking dark you can't see anything. This show is properly lit. There's never a scene that's too dark that you can't
Well,
see.
hold on.
And I think that's amazing.
Even when the narrative function is that they're in small rooms with candles all around Jacob,
Yeah,
it is
you can still
properly
see
lit.
what's
Yeah.
happening. It's not
Don't
like
give me Castle Snow Gate or whatever
Yeah.
it was fucking
oh, if
called.
you have the right kind of TV, it's
Yeah.
not so bad. Like,
Yeah.
No.
Like, light your shows better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So shout out to them. I mean, the show looks amazing, and all the costuming, like it's incredible.
No,
Yeah.
it's wild. It's a triumph. I'm hoping that it holds its quality through the end, but so far it's four episodes, all bangers as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, let's maybe hop over to final thoughts. Hoppy over with do that, and yeah, let's unsheath some final thoughts. Right after this, I learned all those
Where
direction
is-
words from karate because he had Ushido, like a rear kick, a forward kick,
shit.
Mai, Ushido, Migi, Hidari, right, left. So that was in my early karate days, anyway.
Wow.
I didn't study the blade,
makes
but I
sense.
studied the
fist.
closed fist. Yeah.
The hand.
The foot.
Yeah, that's the foot fist way. That's what Taekwondo means, literally. Anyway.
Well, we're back. We're talking the foot fist way. No, just kidding.
What
we're talking a little bit more
what
samurai.
belt level did you get to, Mike? If I can ask you that.
Well, weirdly, my favorite color, I got to purple belt, which is just
that
prior
pretty
to
good?
brown in that system.
and that's prior to black.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there's brown. I think
pretty good.
two levels of brown in that system and then black. So upper intermediate, you know.
I took karate when I was like 12, and I think I got to like orange or red or something, but I
Okay.
wasn't.
That's like third
it
or
wasn't-
something.
Yeah, it wasn't very good. I mean, it was some McDojo in Ohio. You know, it's not like
Right.
Yeah,
So I'm not going to say mine. I don't trust any of it. Yeah.
Well,
Right.
my friend actually that I was in karate with inherited the dojo from our sensei, and now he runs it. So I know a dojo owner. which
Well,
is
I'm sorry.
interesting.
It's called Cobra Kai, isn't it? Isn't that the style he teaches?
Yeah. His name's
That's
Johnny
right.
Lawrence.
that's
Absolutely.
Eagle Fang.
Yeah, Eagle Fang. But that is a good
Wow,
point.
that's cool though.
Yeah. So it's a weird thing, but yeah, I took karate, but the amount of, I think, Japanese stuff that was influencing our pop culture when we were younger, I want to touch on because like I took karate because of Power Rangers, which was a Japanese show that was
100%.
adapted, right?
Exactly
Ninja
the same for
Turtles,
me.
Yep,
all that
without
kind of
a
stuff.
100%. I was into Power Rangers, and that's why I took karate. And I dressed as a Power Ranger or a samurai for Halloween for like 8 years straight. When I was a kid.
Well, we
I
mentioned
dressed as the
Scorpion
two
and
Mortal Kombat
Sub-Zero.
Ninjas. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Th-
Yes,
that's
100%.
ninjas,
Every year.
right? That's the same time period.
Yeah,
So yeah, just the amount of Japan influence, and that's why like even the cyberpunk, not to get too astray
Yes.
here, but like this idea of like Japan and Asia futurism and like the influence because of the car industry and just how much trade we were doing at that time. There's so much kind of back and forth with Japan to the point where it's kind of what Korea's doing now, where we
Yeah.
have K-pop and Parasite winning Oscars. Like it was a big kind of thing influencing our pop culture over here.
Well,
that time period.
and it's interesting too because Japanese history, just recent history, of course, they had a big loss in World War II. They
Mhm.
had to recover from that, so they were sort of struggling for many years. But then in the 80s, I believe, they really had a big economic boom due to manufacturing and making all these companies and technology and stuff. So they had this huge boom, and then they had a big cultural boom of exporting all these cultural products, like you're talking about, to the West.
Mhm.
So it's really a success story that they were able to recover from their low point of post World War II. Of course, Gojira
Minus
attacked,
one.
that didn't help. Yeah,
That,
Right.
that was
That
the
was
big
rough.
issue.
Right. But you know, and then
you know what? Here now, he's teaming up with that goddamn monkey.
that's right, Donkey Kong and Bowser, the movie.
That's right.
But just and yeah, like to suffice that to say, like from Kurosawa, you know, in the late 40s, 50s, Godzilla being in the 50s, almost, 70 years of that character, like the rich history of kind of Japanese cinema and stuff, and
yeah,
back and forth cultural exchange. It's cool to see this show on TV and not only see it, but see that it's good, and it's, from what I can tell as a white person, authentic as it can be, and we have the right creatives behind it. So I'm happy for that.
I think they're trying really hard to make it as authentic as possible. Again, it's based on a book by a white English guy, so it's like
it's a ton of Asian talent behind the camera though right now, and
set in the backdrop of a historical, like it's the characters' names are different, but it's kind of set up in something that you can draw a lot of direct one-to-one real, influence.
Absolutely.
For. Yeah. So I'm super pleased with it. You were right, Jacob.
You were.
I said you guys got to get on it.
And here's the thing. I get these recs from people that I don't jump on immediately. Obviously, if we're doing this podcast, like I have to watch one of them. But I could have, there's no fucking rule on this thing. I could have watched the first one and not liked it and come on to this podcast and just debated you guys the whole time and not watch the rest. I finished it because it was a great recommendation. It's a really good fucking show, and I'm really excited to watch it. So great work.
Yeah.
I knew from episode 1, I was like, some shows, they take a little bit to get into. You're like, I'll give it a couple episodes, see how it goes. This episode, this show, after episode 1, I was like, I am hooked. Like, I'm watching this every week, appointment viewing, because it is so, it hooks you. Like, you're like, I want to see what happens next. So great writing.
Literally, classic. It's war is the cliffhanger line we get this week. So.
And
what a fucking existential horror that you would be with a translator and saying what's happening, and she would be like, I don't know, this is bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And the communication themes is so interesting to me because you're sometimes relying on these translators that are biased in their own ways, and you can't trust them to translate for you accurately. But then, of course, even like Mariko, when she translates, she's sort of politing up what he's saying, right, in a way that won't give offense to the Lord.
She's dressing it up.
Well, meanwhile, he asks that Portuguese priest, well, how can I trust that you'll say it? And when he says, I literally just said what you said, and he's like, interesting, okay.
Yeah. Well, that priest was also like, I'm bound, honor bound by my faith to, translate you accurately and all that stuff, but you don't
even if I hate
trust
you.
him. Yeah.
Goddamn Protestants.
Martin Alvito, who I think will be coming back as a character later too. So
right, but Norinaga's smart enough to have Mariko there just in case, because he's like, everybody could have a bias.
He's practicing
so
Portuguese.
He had to check for that as well, because he's.
Hey, did I make this up and imagine this? Does Mariko use a fucking naginata pole arm at one point to fucking stab a bunch of people?
Does.
She's doing her own fighting, so I was like, damn.
Yeah, she busts out the naginata. That's right.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah, where they're trying to escape the forest, all that. And then, Blackthorn is just using a spear, which I think makes sense because he would be familiar with that, roughly. That's in every culture. And it's actually like one of the most OP weapons if you think about it. Like, it's got reach, you're safe.
Some space, yeah.
Yeah, same thing with the Naginata. A little bit of space, right? I can't contend with these sword guys. They seem like they practice a lot.
I like when they're talking about the assassin, too, where they're talking about this. It's like this special group of assassins that train their whole life for one kill, essentially. And this lady was like she's called like the maid or something.
She's like a maid for years.
Yeah.
And
she's just deep cover until she gets her kill, right?
Yeah, there's a historical precedent for this in the ninja culture. It's called a kunoichi. It's like a female ninja, kind of a female agent for that purpose. So I guess that would be considered a kunoichi because really ninjas didn't wear ninja suits much. They would dress up like a merchant or a maid. They would blend in and
giant shuriken on their back.
You'd dress like a normal person.
If you're one of these, paternalistic lords, you wouldn't expect a woman to just start attacking you, right? Probably.
Right.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is, so when they're escaping, when they're going through the forest, they get attacked, right? Mm-hmm. And so Mariko's husband, Buntaro, stays behind.
His friends call him Buntaro.
His friends call him Buntaro.
That's true. You don't
And so
get to
he
call
stays
him that.
behind to like fight out to like let them get away, and basically sacrificing himself and just fighting
Well,
until he
talk about
dies.
advantage. I mean, again, Mike, that's where I'm like, the samurai armor makes you invincible because all those other people are like backing away from him, and he's like, "Come on!" He's like
Yeah.
slashing at them. You're like, "Oh my god!"
Well, and it's interesting too because their armor isn't steel, like steel plate, like
No,
medieval
it's
armor.
not. No, no,
'Cause
no.
they don't need it because for samurai sword they just need like the wood or
It's-
whatever it's made out of, right?
It's more of a
To not
slashing, so you can kind of get a deflection where there's
Yeah.
less of stabbing threat. But
Also, in
They're
medieval,
not
they
getting
use like
shot.
heavy maces and things like that that are more blunt objects, war hammers and things like that.
Man,
yeah,
when Jonathan Blackthorne is like, "Yeah, I am married," she's like, "Really? You're married?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm married, got a couple kids." And they're just kind of sitting there, and then that arrow gets shot in that guy's neck next to him, and he's like, "Ah," and he's like immediately dying. You're like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
yeah. Someone
And
said
then
there's.
Yeah,
they
go
just described this as like it's like tension and then shocking violence out of nowhere.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
Right.
and it's always
It's
good
sudden.
action too.
It's
But
sudden
that's,
and
I mean,
That's
quick.
that
kind
was
of
the
how Game of
canon
Thrones
thing.
was too,
Mhm.
at its peak. And Game of Thrones early seasons they had budgetary constraints, right? But they still had scenes like this where it's like all of a sudden they're being ambushed or something.
And they both destroy a horse in season 1. So
Right.
I guess that's his formula.
Poor horse.
But this scene when Buntaro is sacrificing himself so the rest of them can get away, and then Mariko, knowing that her husband's going to die, just kind of has to not show any emotion because, again, that's like their culture. Is just you have to
She
have,
looks away.
And
yeah,
he's
you just
played
have to hide your true feelings.
right, and he's kind of shown to be kind of a dick to her a little bit because he's like,
Yeah,
"Why are you
she's
going
got
to the
like a-
castle?" And like,
Well,
we're
yeah.
kind of getting set up to be like, "Oh, fuck this guy, Blackthorn's gonna get your girl." But then in
Right.
that moment, you see the heroism and like that's why he's respected because
He
of his
earns-
warrior spirit.
The fucking highest honor, Hiroyuki Sanada does a little bow at him, which is like,
Yeah,
all right, I did it.
Wataru!
My whole life was for that.
and then
Great.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
But that's
it
what
really
you-
sells that.
That's kind
Yeah.
of like, your whole life. You're like, at one point, I might have to die for my lord, and it'll be like my
I
greatest honor.
Might.
Yeah, yeah.
100% certain chance he will use me as a shield at one point.
Highly
Right.
likely. But yeah, I think that was a interesting bit of nuance to give this heroic
Yes.
moment to a character they were kind of painting as a bit of a jerk to Mariko, but it's like
Yes.
duty
Yeah,
is
even
such
when
a thing.
she's
Yeah.
when she's talking about him to Blackthorn, she's like, he's like his friends really love him and respect him. I'll just say that.
He's a good
He's a great
fighter.
warrior. He's a
Yeah.
great warrior. Oh, okay. Anything else about him? He's a great warrior.
Like, yeah, it's one of his best qualities. Yeah.
One of his best qualities. Every character,
Yeah.
because again, even that
Mhm.
guard who's like, "Don't talk to my lord that way," and they're like, "Hey,
Kill
quiet."
yourself.
It's like, you're right.
And then
Yeah,
they
the
give
fact
the
that
head of
that
the
guy's family is a big character.
yeah,
Right.
and they
It's wild.
deliver the baby and his head in a box to the wife, and
Yes.
like, it's like fucking
That's
crazy.
messed up.
This is
Yeah,
what
they're
you
like,
get.
Not
And
only
then
do you have to
that's-
kill yourself, but you also have to kill your firstborn, who's a little baby who didn't do anything, right?
Your entire
If I-
family line
God.
has to be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody scuffs Jacob's shoes, and I'm like, "You're gonna treat my man like that?" And Jacob, you're like, "Hey, settle down. Don't do an outburst like that." And I'm like, "You're right. I'll go kill myself."
Right.
It's like the idea. It's like
Yeah.
all he was doing was being like, "You are treating him unfairly," and they're like, "Hey, shut up."
Right.
But he should have
like-
concealed his true feelings behind the
God.
8-foot wall, right?
God, the
And-
8-foot fold wall.
And just the way that Sonata has to play that, where he's like, "Oh, you think that was an insult? No, dog." You know, he's like, and then he says,
No,
"I
no,
hope
no,
you
no,
accept my apology of this guy killing himself."
Which is you die.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, "All right,
Oh,
guess we're not escalating." Oh,
that
it's so
stuff-
tense.
Again,
Yeah.
that stuff is
Beautiful.
the coolest part. What I'm just
Yeah.
getting at it from a casual viewer of like, I'm not kidding about the isekai stuff. When
Mm-hmm.
it's like the travel, it reminds me so much of the original isekai, Gulliver's Travels,
Heck
which
yeah.
is a Englishman who ends up in a foreign country who just wants to go home. The longing. It reminds me of the island of Dr. Moreau, an Englishman who ends up on an island who just wants to go home. I know that sounds repetitive, but I'm not kidding.
Mm.
That style of storytelling where you know your protagonist is going to be a put upon person who, almost like Job, is going to go against the trials of Jesus to fucking come out on the other side, is exciting and cool. And it's just really good storytelling. And in part, I kind of hate that this fucking white guy is like the big name behind all this stuff. I'm glad it's just called Shogun and that it's not like
Well, really,
James
it's
Claville's Shogun or something.
Oh, yes.
God,
The Blackthorn
ugh.
Chronicles.
Well, I was
Yeah,
saying,
that
like,
would
I wouldn't
be-
say Blackthorn. He's one of the main characters, but I would say there's three main characters, which is
Yes.
Toranaga, Mariko, and Blackthorn.
And
They're
maybe
all
Ishida is the
trifecta.
foil. Yeah.
One of them is
Yeah.
acted by the most unusual actor I've ever seen, who I am now obsessed with observing, and his name is Cosmo, which does
Cosmo
add to
Jarvis.
the weirdness of the man in my.
Yes.
Have we seen him in anything, Jacob? Would I know him from anything?
I don't know. He's not in too much. He's sort of.
Okay.
This is sort of maybe his breakout role.
It deserves to be his breakout. I
Again,
hope he a
people
lot of acclaim from this.
are people compare him to Tom Hardy, and of course, I've talked about my love for Tom Hardy many times on this podcast. As an actor, I think he's
who
incredible.
is the guy in Upgrade? Did you see the movie Upgrade?
Oh, sure, yeah, that's another Tom Hardy like kind of guy.
That was my knockoff Tom Hardy. He
Yeah.
has been replaced. Whatever that guy's name is, this guy Cosmo is my Tom Hardy now.
Cosmo
Because-
Jarvis. He was in a movie called Calm with Horses with Barry Keoghan.
I'm
How
seeing
is
a credit for Annihilation.
Keoghan?
Don't know what character. Yeah, I know Barry Keoghan.
Oh, I
And-
assume, is he an Irishman then?
He's he's British, but
He is
was
British. Okay.
he was in Lady Macbeth with
The Florence Pugh one?
Pugh, Lady
Oh wow.
Macbeth.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen
Fair.
him in some stuff then. He has never popped out for me, or like
Mhm.
even with the
No.
long hair, he didn't look as like what I'm dialed into now, where I'm like, that's John Blackthorne. Like
Well, you
he's
sent me.
Yeah,
almost El Muad'Dib or whatever. I would call
You-
Paul.
he's
Yeah.
a white boy in a strange land, just like
Yeah.
Muad'Dib. Yeah.
No, and you had sent me. I sent to the chat like a woodblock or a classic Japanese painting of what Blackthorn was supposed to look like, or
Yes.
that Adams person.
William
and it-
Adams, a depiction
Yeah.
of William Adams drawn by a Japanese person.
And it
And he
looks
was
like
a savage.
no.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, would he have a beard? Would they just clean shaven him? But then when I saw that depiction, I'm like, I guess they let him have a beard. It's like, don't shave it all the way. I was like, okay.
Right.
A curly-headed Brit who popped out in that country and was like, rah, rah. I mean, the Japanese
Well,
must
that's
have been
why-
fucking
Throws a cross on the
terrified.
ground.
What is this? I'm drunk. Bring me sake.
He's like a little. He's like a gremlin. That's why I'm
Yes.
obsessed with him, because all the Japanese people see him as this dirty gremlin who won't bathe 2 times a
You
week.
haven't killed the barbarian yet? Like a couple
Yeah.
characters like say that where they're like, you're letting that stray dog live here?
Right.
Mhm. But
When you're talking about Gulliver's
One
Travels
Piece.
and isekais and stuff too, I was thinking this also reminds me of. Did you ever watch that Marco Polo show on Netflix?
I didn't.
Yeah, I watched a
Benedict
couple
Wong
episodes.
played
mhm.
Kubla. Who was the leader?
Kublai
of
Khan. Yeah,
Kublai
Benedict
Khan, thank
Wong
you, Kublai Khan,
was sort of
yeah.
the star of that show, and then Marco Polo was an actor that I don't know very well, but
Similar.
that was
wasn't
the
working
original.
anymore.
That was the original like Game of Thrones, like where they're like, oh, let's greenlight
Mhm.
this show. It's got politics.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, we need our own Game of Thrones. Let's get Marco Polo.
No,
that was
they
back
had-
in
yeah.
2014. So that was
It had
10
the
years
sex
ago.
and the violence, Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember them pitching that.
Very
Yeah,
similar
and
kind
why
of
did
show
that
though.
fail?
It's like
And why
this,
does this work?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. Like
Because
people
I
like
watched it
that
too.
show.
I didn't finish the first season though. I don't know why I just didn't continue watching it.
Yeah,
Huh.
I started it and didn't continue watching it either. So I'm not sure. But
it is a similar thing though, because he just has to basically you are with this lord now for the next till I get back. Sorry, dude. That's what you have to do. You're with him.
Yeah.
Do what
It's
he
like
says.
this European coming to an Asian country and becoming an advisor to a leader and that kind of thing.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like going to jail when
you're
somebody's
kind
like,
of in-
you're his property now, and you're like, okay.
Yeah. Not really a guest, let's say, kind of thing.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Interesting.
You're not free to leave, but you can, sort of live in comfort while you're here.
yeah. Fascinating. But yeah, I'm loving it. Even when his wife points the gun at those guys and it's like, get the fuck out of here. And they're trying to
That was
confiscate his
badass,
guns.
yeah.
It's like,
And he's
okay.
like, oh,
He's dual wielding.
He's like, she will do, she will, protect my shit, even though she hates me. Cool,
Tell the Anjin to give me the guns.
Yeah. No, that's all great.
Man, what a show! What a show!
Yeah, what a
We
show. I'm
love
looking
it.
forward to watching a new one. Daisuke.
By the way, the Marco Polo show, the executive producers and the people that directed the pilot and second episodes are our Norwegian pirate boys that we're going to be talking about with Dead Men Tell No Tales. So
Whoa.
the directors of that movie. So give
Wow.
a look at that.
What a combination. Kaizoku, the old pirates. We're back at it again. We can't escape
Right.
piracy.
Well, I was holding this in my pocket, but the number of One Piece references. There's a character named Sengoku. There's there are people who are I'm the daimyo of Curry. Is Curry a place in Japan, Mike? Kuri? No.
Not that I know of
Kuri.
by name, but
There's just a lot of period stuff where I felt like this must be so ingrained into their culture that even Oda-san just is like, well, let me just get all this out. They just must love.
Oh
it.
yeah.
I wish there was a Jonathan Blackthorne character.
Right. No, and this period is like, it's like cowboys for us. Like it's this romanticized time period. It's in all their pop culture. Like I said, Nobunaga is the villain in so many games. Like
yeah.
So
It's interesting that he's the villain but not the hero.
it's
Because you could look at it that he was
complicated.
also a hero in some ways too. But of course,
Right.
none of that's what's so interesting is
Trying to
it's
keep
like
these damn Catholics out.
all these different factions,
right.
these different daimyos fighting each other. It's like if America, if like all the 50 states were constantly at warring with each other over land and stuff.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, I love what Mike
Reckon.
just said, because sometimes when we do stuff like this, where I'm like, is this against the premise of our podcast? Where it's like Normies Like Us. It's like the thing that like all of pop culture is consuming. Those are the topics we'll go on. It's like Japanese book. But like Mike, what you just said, where it's literally like Japanese culture views essentially this time period this book is covering as the thing that sums up their whole culture, where it was like Americans and cowboys and this period of samurai.
Westward expansionism, freedom.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like
Sure,
that, like,
sure.
of course. It's like, and Jacob, what you were saying about like the first miniseries was like the #1 TV movie miniseries. Like, watch it.
Like everyone
next
was
to
watching
Roots.
that.
It's like, of course.
Yeah.
Which, when are they going to remake Roots, by the way?
They did
shocked
already,
that
right?
he's fucking done that. Oh,
Well,
really?
Cuba Gooding Jr., right, was in it, or was he in the original one?
That's the original.
In the remake, Cuba was in it?
Hold on,
Maybe
hold on.
not.
Kinte? I fucking hope not. That he'd be very old at that point.
That's true, yeah. No, I don't know. I never watched Roots,
2016 they redid it.
actually. Okay.
Really?
I've only seen the
And
original.
again, a
though.
huge book. I mean, that book was
Yeah.
such a
Yeah.
phenomenon.
And
that when
Roots
they
was a
made it
huge
Miniseries
hit
event.
miniseries in the time.
Yeah.
And actually this Shogun, the 80s Shogun, got made because of the success of Roots. Because
that makes
people want
so
more
much
of
sense.
this.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And this, it
Interesting.
swept, we should say the original swept like the Emmys and the Golden Globes. Like, it
Oh,
was
I'm
a
sure, yeah.
phenomenon.
Oh,
So,
this needs to get costuming, like
Well, I
you
was-
said. Like this should get
Yeah.
a ton of noms.
I hope so.
And this, again, it's a Hulu. I think is it AMC, Hulu?
FX,
It might be
thing?
FX on
FX.
Hulu. I think it
Yeah.
might just be a Hulu original. I don't know.
Okay. But I
Yeah.
know the numbers are very good. Like it's the most watched thing on Hulu since I can't even remember, but it's a big hit for Hulu. And nowadays, like I said, we don't have the cultural. We just have a lot more options. Where back in the day, like there was like 3 channels, so everyone was watching the same thing. Right now, you have a million different shows, million different streaming services. But in terms of today, this is definitely a hit. Maybe not on Game of Thrones level yet, but people are talking about it. So I do think it's normies are getting into it. And Hiroyuki Sanada even said in an interview, like he's hoping that this will, get Western audiences more familiar with Japan. So yeah, I think it's a good thing.
I'm a like I said, I'm a sleeper build kind of weeb. I like Japan. And being a fan of this stuff, I like that this is hitting, and like Japan is kind of having a moment with Godzilla -1, winning an Oscar, and like
Right.
this show doing well. So I love to see that because they have
think,
kind of generally produced content for Japan. Is just what I want to say. Now that we're just getting a little exposure.
Of course, anime is a big thing. for a lot of people. And, weebs can get a bad rap sometimes because some of them can be very obnoxious or just like idolizing Japan and not realizing
or
that,
like reductive kind of viewpoint of
Jacob, here's what I was fucking horrified and worried about. When you were like, it's based on this famous novel that a white guy wrote, and it's about a white guy going to Japan, and like in the back of the day, that fucking racist web cartoon guy just got fucking exposed, stone tossed. I don't know if you guys know him. And in his human form, he had a bunch of tweets as a white loser guy with tall glasses. Kind of looks what you would assume as far as someone who was interested in Japanese culture. Had a bunch of tweets that were like, hey, I'm in Japan looking for a wife, white guy, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That is such a culture and just an amount of shame that you do want to push down these waves. That I was horrified that's what the show would be. So
that guy is like literally a Nazi.
No.
That guy is a Nazi.
And if
the worst example, but those people do exist, unfortunately.
Right. And to bring like the other version of the story we've seen, The Last Samurai, that's like the homie like kills her husband and then marries her. And like that's like so fucking crazy that they made that choice.
But also Japan is really proud of that movie too, because like when it came out, it like won, awards in Japan and stuff for like best foreign film. So they really liked that America was making a film about Japan, but I do think it's more reductive than
Too Many Minds.
Like to point out too, narratively, The Last Samurai is Hiroyuki Sanada in that movie. It is not the white guy. I promise you, Tom Cruise is not the last samurai.
He's not the last. Isn't
No, yeah.
What's his name?
Let Them Fight.
I'm sorry, I thought it was Hiroyuki
Sanada is in it though.
Sanada is the guy that trains him.
He's always briefing him.
Right?
Yeah,
that's right.
But Ken Watanabe is the Last Samurai.
Yes.
But this, I think people can fetishize Japan or put it on a pedestal where they're like, oh, everything in Japan is amazing. I love anime and stuff. But I think there's a way to appreciate Japanese culture and media without being obnoxious about it. You know what I mean?
I think there are some people who will watch the show who unfortunately will be like, yo, look at those subservient women. That's exactly what I would want. That's, but the show is better than that. And it's going to be.
Right. Well, I think that's what's so interesting about the character of Mariko, where she's not just like this subservient woman. Like she has her own thing going on and like she's more complex than you would think.
She has to pull the levers available to her in the structure of that society, but there's agency and very well written character. Like I'm loving it. And even Blackthorn, like we don't know what the fuck Norinaga's thinking because Blackthorn has no right to know. Like we're just as lost as he is. Like he's not pushing the plot. He's being dragged along it, reluctantly.
His plot is I want to get home. I want to find my crewmates. You're so right. That's all it is for that character.
Yeah, and I think I love that. Yeah, he's not the hero.
The sort of white savior trope because he's not the hero. He's just some guy who got shipwrecked there, who has his own motives, and all these lords are using him as a pawn. But he's not coming in and being like, I'm gonna like challenge this lord to a duel or something. Like he's he's not that guy.
When he's got his little peeper out and his little thong sack, you just look at this guy and you just feel pity for him. You're just like, look at this pathetic little guy.
I do love that part after that whole escape and everything. He's like, my lord would like to study your diving technique. He just dives a bunch of
again.
Keep doing it.
You kind of gotta lay down for a minute, man.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna race me to shore. You just dove 300 times
in freezing Japanese water. Can you imagine what that feels like?
Yeah.
But cool of the Lord to be like, all right, let's do this thing.
Hiroyuki Sanada is doing an amazing job because I'm like, I want to impress this guy. Like this guy is so like respected and stuff. Like I feel intimidated. I just want him to like me, basically.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like basically alive at his whim, but like he's crushing it,
Yes.
And
he's just got a presence to him that he's
I think if this maintains, he should at least get nominated best leading actor in a limited series. And I think best supporting could go either for Mariko or Blackthorn, but he shouldn't get leading. That should be
best actor,
Hiroyuki.
best actress.
Cosmo will probably get leading just because that's.
No, I'm with Mike. No. I think you submit him as supporting. I think
but they could both be leading, but then Cosmo might win. I don't know.
Strange voice. I just
Depends
think
on what the voters would do.
we need to be given some flowers maybe to a great career for the Sonata.
No, I agree. I totally agree. But I
The
also think
Sonata.
Cosmo is doing great. You know,
Yes.
Tom Hardy from Timu. I won't
Mhm.
even disrespect him because I think he's improved on being just a Tom Hardy knockoff to me. And now, look, I'm easy to please. You know, if you do like a weird voice and a weird accent, like I'm down. You know, so
Right.
yeah, I love it.
If you had to act in a movie right now, Jacob, would you be like, I'll do what Tom Hardy does? I'll
Yeah,
do
probably.
the most
Weirdest.
acting."
I'll do the Bane voice.
I need a lobster.
Ah.
If this show was a person, I would certainly pillow it. That's all I'm saying. You know.
Yes, Mike. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
pillow. Yes, pillow.
And if this if this sounds good to you and you haven't watched it, I say give it a chance because this show gonna impress you.
Wow.
If you watch it.
I can't imagine. I mean, I'm going to hit it up to everybody I know. I know that my dad's not watching this yet. I believe he watched the original miniseries. So I think I'll say to him, hey, Richard Chamberlain, out. Weird Tom Hardy.
Cosmo in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I pitched it to my mom, you know, and my mom and stepdad, they watch shows like Game of Thrones and stuff too. So I was like, you got to watch this show. It's really good. It's based on history. And you just visited Osaka. So you're going to love that angle of it.
So
like,
cool.
Hell yeah. And they were hooked on after the first episode. So it's really, it's something that anyone can enjoy, I think. And I do recommend, I think you should watch the sub version because I really think you get that sense of like, you can't always understand what the Japanese people are saying because you're not intended to, just like John Blackthorne can't understand what they're saying. So I like that disconnect of communication.
And I should have said this up top, but like the structure of language in Japan, if you're familiar, it is hierarchical. Like there's a level of respect you show people by the way you pronounce and conjugate verbs, etc. Like there's a formality of language when, like we said, we don't use sama for him. So you're losing that element of the culture.
I love it. Yeah.
I called it pronouns in our One Piece episode, Mike. It's honorifics. That's the suffix that they add, and it's just
and also
such
just
an
the order
language.
they say things is different than English. So like if you're saying, Colin, I will do something, they'll say like I will, or they'll say, do it backwards.
It's subject, object, verb. Something I will do. It's like Yoda.
Yeah.
But
that really cleared it up in my mind. Mike.
The simplest way, though, it's like arigato is chillin'. Arigato gozaimasu is slightly more polite, and gozaimashita is more polite than that, right? But they have an even level above that in this, which is crazy.
It's like
so you lose
fashioned.
Yeah, which is like,
well,
look at the ground.
Yeah.
I like when, like Westerns and stuff where they talk kind of old fashioned, they have a different dialect. So that's what you're saying. That's kind of what this show is doing, where they're talking in a 1600s dialect rather than a modern Japanese dialect. And I really like that.
Imagine.
I wish I knew Japanese.
Like some of the root forms of the verbs are there, but I'm like, what is this conjugation? It's really quite interesting. So
wow.
And just a final anecdote. I love samurai stuff, and I didn't even know we were going to go to Tokugawa's gravesite. I was doing a filming thing with my buddies, and I wasn't sure what they were doing. It was a local tourism video for Japan, and I didn't know. I was like Blackthorn. I was just getting brought along. I didn't know what the plan was, what we were shooting every day, and then we just ended up there and like, yo, this is Tokugawa's gravesite. I'm like, what?
Is it like a temple? I mean, is it like really?
It's a big
honoring?
urn. It's like a big cast iron urn on top of a mountain, like up in the mountains, and then just below that, there's like giant temples and all these gifts. There's a giant Dutch lantern. There's gifts from other samurai and like fiefs. It's like massive. It's this whole structure, but then his thing is just like a cast iron urn about 10, 15 feet tall, sitting in this forest. And it is surreal. And I was like, damn, who knew? So anyway,
that's so cool.
It was really cool. I think I never expected to have that. So that's my samurai anecdote.
Awesome.
Well, I'm very jealous of you guys having expanded culture. That's very cool of both of you. So
yeah, no, I've definitely been in. I might have mentioned this on the podcast too, but recently I watched all of Studio Ghibli's, all of Hayao Miyazaki's films. So I've been watching a lot of Japanese media recently, and really getting it. There's a lot of themes of Buddhism and nature in his movies that I just love, and I'm just really interested in how sort of Buddhists see nature differently than other people.
Well,
so.
Jacob, I might fucking rewatch Throne of Blood because that must be around this period, right?
Oh yeah, it's all Kagemusha, Ron. All that is based on
Colin,
this.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I subscribe to the Criterion channel, like a film snob would, And I put on Yojimbo the other day because I was like, let me put on some fucking classic Kurosawa samurai movies. I put on Yojimbo. I was like, damn, man.
Fucking R2D2 rolled out. You were like, all my favorite characters are here.
Yeah.
That is
Throne
my
of Blood
favorite
is based
one.
on Shakespeare, right? It's like Macbeth.
Ran is King
Throne of
Lear.
Blood is Macbeth. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ran is King Lear. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so we love samurai stuff, and like we said, it's the cowboy equivalent. That's why we have the 7 samurai getting made in the Magnificent Seven, and Kurosawa is inspired by John Ford. Like this kind of back
Right.
and
It's
It
the
forth.
all
same
leads to
tropes,
Rebel Moon.
Just different cultures.
And
That's
it
right.
all roads lead
Rebel
into
Moon, the
Rebel Moon.
culmination of all culture is Rebel
Without
Moon.
Hidden Fortress, there's no Rebel Moon or Star Wars.
There's no nemesis.
No nemesis.
God.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah, this has
we
been great.
love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say arigato gozaimasu to
Yeah.
all of our
Arigato
listeners
gozaimasu.
out there, all our
Arigato
normies.
gozaimasu.
Uh,
Hontou ni
check it out on
otsukaresama
Hulu.
deshita. Everybody that made this, otsukaresama deshita.
Hi.
It
Hi.
means really good work, everybody. You say that at the end of the day. Otsukaresama deshita.
All right. I'm going to eat these fermented soybeans or
Natto.
mung beans. What did you say they were?
There's fermented soybeans, and it's called natto, and I think they are natto very good. But they're supposedly healthy. I'm going to give them a run. Because this show is so good, I will buy natto, and by the next...
I don't know.
You can get it.
Boy. All right.
We love it.
Well, if you guys have any recommendations, listeners, if there's anything else sort of in this world, we would love if you hit us up at normies_like_us. And if you said, oh, if you guys like Shogun, here's the isekai anime I recommend. It's called Anjin Pilot Blackthorn Lost in Sad World Try to Get Home. Sounds familiar. I'd say, that sounds like a pretty good show.
Yeah. And broadly, I guess this genre is called Jidaigeki. Jidaigeki. So
what does that mean?
It's just like the Edo period drama. It means like period drama, but a Jidaigeki is kind of Western. Like that's our term of a cowboy movie. There's samurai period, Edo period is Jidaigeki.
Is Sun, and shout out to Akira Toriyama, like we said up top, but is Son Goku, which is, I guess, based on like Wukong, right? Like the
Journey to the
monkey
West.
thing, Wukong, Journey to the West. So it's like a weird translation.
Yeah.
But is Son Goku, is any of that supposed to be like Sengoku?
No, I think that's all just kind of Journey to the West, space stuff. Yeah, it's kind of its own universe. Yeah.
Fascinating. It's a beautiful language, beautiful culture.
And when Toriyama was like, oh yeah, this Goku guy, he's actually an alien. Do you think people are like amazed or like, how did
What
they
the
feel?
fuck are you talking about? It's like, hey man.
Right? He has a tail, or does he have a tail? I don't know.
Yeah,
I've
he has a
never
I think he has a
Dragon-
beard. I think he has a curly beard, and he looks like a demon, an Englishman.
I was never a Dragon Ball guy. That's kind of a blind spot for me. But
He does have a tail.
I respect
don't-
it. And
You have to cut off your
RIP
tail so you
to my
don't turn
man.
into a werewolf monkey during a
Yeah,
full moon.
basically.
Yeah.
See, I like that. I like the tail aspect.
No, you have to cut it off though.
With a katana.
Or you'll be a werewolf monkey. But anyway,
Right.
unrelated. Jidaigeki, Chambara is like sword play movies, just to shout it out.
You know
but
what
yeah.
else? Just the truly the last thing I want to say, because I want to know your guys if you have these as well.
Yeah.
When I was watching this, and that moment where Marika says like she wants you to have these swords, it's her family's swords. She wants you to hold that legacy so that you can protect yourself or whatever. And it's this beautiful, touching thing. So much of Japan is culture and history passed down to each other. In my mind, I had a flash to 10-year-old Colin sitting in our rec room where my father sits me down and says, see this little katana? Your grandfather got it off of a Japanese guy he killed in World War II, and it's ours
geez.
now.
Wow.
You
Right.
guys have stuff like that? Like it's
No,
Not in
there
our
should be a way to return that
collections.
stuff. I don't feel good about having any.
no,
of
you
that.
won that in combat. That's your
I
family's
don't
now.
think that's fair. I don't
That's
care
the Tom
about
Cruise rule.
it. No.
But yeah, I don't have any of those personal anecdotes in our family
The
that I know of.
worst.
but-
My grandfather flew bombers in World War II in the Pacific Theater, so
Huh.
I don't think he killed anyone in hand-to-hand combat or anything like that. Though he was just
Okay.
a
Well, that's
pilot,
good.
so he was an Anjin-san.
I don't think mine did either. I don't know how he had this sword.
Sometimes you just might find one. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and just lie.
Yeah.
Souvenir.
Tell a story. All right.
the-
Horrors of war. Horrors of history.
War is
Again,
bad.
If you like history,
Peace is good.
watch this show. Piece
Yeah.
is good. If you're not having conflicts, hit us up at normies_like_us. Rate, review, subscribe. We like that a lot. Hit us at YouTube. Otherwise, we have been your hosts. This is, I'm going to say Colin Blackthorn with my little dick hanging out.
There you go. I'm going to say a name for my friends is Mikaru.
Mikaru.
It's not my true name.
Mm-mm.
And this is Anjin
secret.
Kobsama. The
Oh,
best
Kobsama.
pilot, the best sea pilot in the Japans.
All right, well,
Arigato.
we're your normie donos. Have a good one.
That's right. Arigato gozaimasu.
Right.
Arigato.
Habayo.